A man travels through time into the pay-to-win game of his dreams and encounters the girl he couldn't obtain even with money. After graduating from high school, I wielded knives for 20 years and became the nation's top knife master. There's nothing I cannot cut. There's nothing my blade cannot slice through. That's right, I am the premier sashimi chef with unrivaled knife skills. Today I'm also working normally. My phone suddenly displayed a game I had previously deleted. At this moment, the local Yakuza boss approached me, insisting I become the gang leader. He directly offered an astronomical deposit of 300 million yen. I refused without hesitation and became extremely angry because unclean individuals had entered the sanitary cooking area. I immediately drove the Yakuza boss away. Even my coworkers questioned why I wouldn't join the Yakuza boss for the good life. But I only wanted to chop fish heads for life, not become a gangster. Then my phone again displayed the game I had deleted before. The Demon King has invaded and needs a hero's assistance. Looking at the beauty of my dreams, I still clicked on it. A flash of white light swept past, and I lost consciousness. When my colleague came looking for him, only a phone remained on the ground with no person in sight. At that moment, the game's loading bar on the phone screen also reached 100%. This game has no real storyline. It doesn't require any skill from you, just spending money. It belongs to the category of direct pay to play garbage games. If you ask why I played this game, of course it's because the female character is my preferred type. I was actually absorbed into the game. The character I possessed wasn't an NPC or a handsome game character. I became background character A. Gioma. This is a world blessed by miracles. I quickly adapted to life here. I couldn't even distinguish whether this was a game or reality. I lived an ordinary second life here, but today I received an acceptance letter from Manhwa Academy. To not disappoint my parents' expectations, I had no choice but to go. I didn't even know how this background character A managed to get into such a prestigious academy. Before my transmigration, Gioma had already awakened his blessing and participated in Manhwa Academy's entrance examination. Blessings are special abilities that humans can use, similar to skills in games. But not everyone possesses them. Blessings are generally inherited. Social classes are divided based on blessings. Manhwa Academy was established under this background. It was nominally built to cultivate heroes. Gioma, who lacks heroic bloodline, entered Manhwa Academy as a special admission student. The reason this world needs heroes is because there are demon kings here. I chanted blessing under my breath. A blessing window immediately popped up. Painless blessing, activation time 30 seconds, cooldown time 12 hours. I couldn't imagine how the previous Gioma managed to get into Manhwa Academy with such a useless blessing. Then I noticed another blessing I gained after possessing this body. Sword God's Blessing. Swinging a sword can cut through anything. Activation condition requires the blade to be under 30 centimeters long and within 5 centimeters wide. The key point is this blessing was never seen when playing the game. With the name Gioma and obtaining the Sword God Blessing that can cut through anything, the only drawback is the overly restrictive activation conditions. A blade 30 centimeters long and 5 centimeters wide is similar in size to my previous life's sashimi knife. To attend Manhwa Academy, one must carry weapons. I completely didn't want to spend money on this academy I was reluctantly attending, but I still needed weapons for self-defense, so I had a bold idea. When entering Manhwa Academy the next day, the teacher confirmed with me whether this was truly my armament. I bought dozens of kitchen knives, because the entrance ceremony required weapon inspection. The teacher thought I was playing a prank. He slapped the table and questioned whether I was treating the academy like child's play, bringing kitchen knives to the placement exam. I could only explain that this was my armament. Even the teacher was overwhelmed by my presence. Just as the teacher was about to explode, I could only explain that I was a special admission student from an ordinary family, and the tuition had already put too much pressure on my parents, making it difficult to ask them for weapon money. The teacher felt somewhat guilty at this point, wondering how he could treat such a filial son this way. I delivered the finishing blow, saying only losers complain about equipment problems. The teacher showed shocked expressions upon hearing this. This seriously earnest tone sounded exactly like someone who had reached a certain pinnacle. The teacher had no choice but to approve my armament, but nearby students mocked how a commoner ended up here. The teacher immediately scolded these students. Gioma was relieved that the weapon inspection was finally over, with the important entrance exam still ahead. Manhwa Academy was completely different from the game. So large, it was like a small city. This was a place where only upper-class people studied. I found a spot to rest. The broadcast announced that the placement exam was about to begin. Although I didn't participate in the entrance ceremony, the placement exam was very important. Gioma pulled out his kitchen knife, preparing to practice. Having wielded knives for 20 years in my previous life, my skills shouldn't be rusty. I planned to try cutting leaves to test my knife skills. The moment I drew the kitchen knife, I felt a thunderous power. System notification, Sword God's Blessing activated. Physical strength too low, armament too low, forcibly using willpower to synchronize with user. Gioma couldn't believe that just drawing the knife activated the blessing. System notification, synchronization complete, may the god's blessing accompany you. After the blessing activated, it felt like entering a fractured space. I didn't know what was happening. The kitchen knife also slipped from my hand. The space then dissipated. The moment I released the knife, he returned to the original world. After activating the sword god's blessing, it felt like the entire world was fractured. A wave of headache struck. I activated the painless blessing again. If every activation of the sword god's blessing causes severe headaches, then this blessing is essentially useless. The broadcast also announced for students to gather at the training ground immediately. I was still hesitating whether to pick up the kitchen knife. The moment I gripped the kitchen knife, a piercing pain shot through my hand. In the training ground, the new students had all arrived here. Adults were still discussing how much money they spent buying armaments for their children. One person noticed that a certain important figure had arrived. That was the 7-star hero Sword Emperor Zieg. People seeing the Sword Emperor quickly moved away from him. At this time, 7-star hero Sage Medea found the Sword Emperor. The Sword Emperor complained about a 70-year-old person dressing so flamboyantly. Sage Medea stated that women need to stay young until death, and offered to use her blessing to make the Sword Emperor 10 years younger, but the Sword Emperor refused. She felt this old man was the same as before, unchanged at all. She questioned why this inflexible old man came here. She probed whether the Sword Emperor came specifically to see his beloved granddaughter. The Sword Emperor remained silent at this moment. The placement exam was about to begin. Gioma also arrived here. He noticed a figure moving through the crowd. This was the Sword Emperor's granddaughter, Abel. Also the main hero of this game, and the primary reason I spent money in my previous life. The subspace was created by Jinghua Academy's first principal. Within the subspace, even if injured, the real body won't be harmed, so students can fight freely within the subspace. This year's placement exam adopted a battle royale format, randomly teleporting 10 students to the same subspace for mutual combat. With no armament restrictions, scoring based on survival time, the Sword Emperor believed that unrestricted armaments would only benefit those in power. Principal Sage Medea explained this was unavoidable, as the Academy's operating funds were provided by these power holders, and this was a concession made to introduce the special admission system. Special admission students refer to ordinary people like me who aren't descendants of heroes. Entering the Academy, I could only watch from afar the goddess I couldn't obtain even with money in my previous life. But I knew that the goddess Abel before me already had someone, because she would become lovers with the game's protagonist. She and someone like me, a special admission student, weren't from the same world. I just wanted to graduate safely and stably from here, then find a stable job and live an ordinary life. I was determined not to activate the Sword God's blessing and experience that tingling sensation again. The broadcast then began announcing the rules. This year's placement exam is Battle Royale, randomly selecting 10 students for the same space. Rankings determined by survival time, then unified class assignment. My goal was to be last place. Then the subspace device activated. A barrier covered the entire arena. I only wanted to finish the exam without drawing my sword. Shortly after the exam began, many people were eliminated. Principal Medea mentioned that this exam's results were already predetermined. Not only was there the Sword Emperor's granddaughter, but also descendants of other 7-star heroes. At this moment, Abel easily defeated other opponents and achieved victory. Seeing this, the Sword Emperor prepared to leave. The results of other students were predictable without watching. Then Sword Emperor Zieg and Sage Medea seemed to sense something. Even outsiders felt this aura. Medea asked the Sword Emperor if he felt it, and the Sword Emperor still couldn't believe it. The two never found the source of this aura. Then a sound caught their attention. This was the sound of subspace fracturing. The two looked at the sky in disbelief. The subspace actually cracked open. With 2 thunderous crashes, a figure fell from the subspace in the sky. A white light flashed. Then a kitchen knife fell down. Principal Medea urgently ordered the medical team to check the students' conditions. I never expected this situation would occur. Right after entering the subspace, everyone began fighting. This scene's combat couldn't be called fighting, only one-sided torture. But they didn't intend to end the battle, instead deliberately tormenting their opponents. After using violence to torture opponents, they would also brutalize the corpses. Because I was too weak, they even ignored me. Then they targeted a girl who had clearly lost the will to fight. Seeing the two preparing to torture her with violence again, I still spoke up to stop them and cursed them as psychopaths. They also discovered I was the previous special admission student. Their target changed from the girl to me. I wanted to use the painless blessing to endure, but it only lasted 30 seconds. But these two would torture corpses for over 30 minutes. I thought about drawing my sword. Using the Sword God's blessing had side effects, but now there were no other options. I still gripped the kitchen knife. Even just 30 seconds would be enough. The younger twin brother attacked me. I first activated the painless blessing, then drew the kitchen knife. System notification: the Sword God's blessing accompanies you. This strike directly severed the opponent's hand. My previous life's master was a Yakuza thug who cut off his own wrist to atone for his sins. He personally taught me how to use a sashimi knife. Now I applied these knife skills in actual combat. The twin brother whose arm was severed screamed frantically, but I didn't plan to spare him. The twin brother fled while calling for help from his big brother. I walked up and finished him off with one strike. The twin's older brother watched this scene in shock. Even so, I had no intention of stopping. The girl I had just saved also watched this scene. The twin's older brother calmly analyzed everything. He thought the kitchen knife might be a secret weapon. Just being careful of the kitchen knife would suffice. He also pulled out his secret weapon. He put on another glove. When equipped with this set of gloves, he could exert 100% of his strength, with defense, jumping ability, and stamina all enhanced simultaneously. Now 3 blessings were active on him at once. Even if that knife was an S-rank item, it couldn't break through his absolute defense. My painless blessing still had 20 seconds left. The twin's older brother struck first, attacking me, while I was still counting down the painless blessing time. When the twin's older brother thought he had already won, by the time he realized it, his body was already filled with kitchen knives. His consciousness gradually blurred. The painless blessing was about to end. A wave of pain struck. The severe pain from the sword god blessing made me lose consciousness. When I regained consciousness, I had awakened in the Academy's hospital. 2 of the 7-star heroes actually appeared before me. The strongest human, Sword Emperor Zieg, was staring at me. Principal Medea was still greeting me. I still didn't know what was happening. Zieg asked what I had done in the subspace. Thinking back now, after drawing the sword, I became unconscious. But the person wielding the sword was indeed myself, so I couldn't explain it to them. Moreover, being targeted by the Sword Emperor, this monster, wouldn't be beneficial. I could only explain that the twins' behavior in the subspace was too excessive, and that I was willing to accept any punishment. Sword Emperor Zieg just stared at me intensely. Principal Medea quickly intervened. Don't look at his fierce appearance now, he was just helping you clear your meridians earlier. For her sake, don't argue with the Sword Emperor. Medea said this while pressing against me. No wonder my body felt light after waking up, it was probably because my meridians were cleared. Medea further explained that during my unconsciousness, the teachers watched the battle replay. Everyone saw how I fought desperately to protect the weak female student. Truly like a white knight from dreams. She kept poking my face with her finger while speaking. Sword Emperor Zeg reminded Medea from the side to maintain her dignity. Medea also told me that the Academy wouldn't hold me responsible, and the twins had voluntarily withdrawn from school. Hearing this, I also relaxed, grateful not to attend school with them. Medea then congratulated Gioma on becoming Jinghua Academy's valedictorian. I was stunned upon hearing this. Principal Medea mentioned that in her 20 years as principal, she had never encountered such a situation. A student actually refusing to become valedictorian. Both Principal Medea and Sword Emperor Zieg were shocked. Medea explained to me again what becoming valedictorian meant. Moreover, this valedictorian was personally selected by the ancestral hero of the subspace. Yet even so, I still refused to become valedictorian. Sword Emperor Zieg gave me a meaningful look. After this, Medea asked the Sword Emperor if he was upset that Gioma took away his granddaughter's valedictorian position. The Sword Emperor explained that he wouldn't object to the ancestral hero's evaluation. If the Academy determined he was valedictorian, they just needed to comply. But Gioma's swordsmanship wasn't excellent, his body wasn't strong, and his experience wasn't abundant. He just wildly swung the knife around, completely different from the sword techniques he had pursued his entire life. However, when clearing Gioma's meridians, there was a strong sense of incongruity. Something that shouldn't exist seemed to be present in his body. This thing even sparked competitive spirit in the Sword Emperor. The 70-year-old Principal Medea then spoke about how handsome male protagonists charging into battle to rescue female protagonists in crisis looked, wondering if she could become a female protagonist if she were 10 years younger. Sword Emperor Zieg really didn't know what to say upon hearing this. Medea asked the Sword Emperor what he really thought, and the Sword Emperor asked Medea if she knew what today's college students called women like her. When Medea was expecting some good title, the Sword Emperor slowly uttered bitch. The Sword Emperor, who hadn't been injured in decades, still got hurt on his face. Class levels are divided into Star, Dragon, Wolf, and Common grades. I came to Wolf grade class. The valedictorians should go to the best Star grade class, but I wanted to go to the worst Common grade class. Principal Medea speculated that putting me in the worst class would likely cause trouble with the board members. So the compromise result was Wolf grade class, because I didn't want to fight tooth and nail with them in the advanced classes. I'd rather pass time in the lower classes until graduation. Opening the classroom door, I immediately noticed something was wrong. Everyone was looking at me, but they just glanced and then ignored me. Just as I was celebrating that the principal's secrecy work was done well, a girl shyly approached and thanked me. I was momentarily stunned, unable to remember who she was. The girl blushed and mentioned the exam. Only then did I remember she was the girl I saved during the placement exam. In terms of results, I did save her, but actually it was also for my own safety. I introduced myself as Gioma, and the girl introduced herself as Chloe. I had never heard this name when playing the game in my previous life. I guess she was probably a minor character like myself. Just as Chloe was about to say something, the bald teacher arrived and told everyone to sit down. The bald teacher congratulated everyone on entering Wolf class. He announced that the first lesson would be physical training, giving everyone 30 minutes to change clothes and meet at the training ground. A student asked what physical training involved. The bald teacher explained, 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, then run 10 laps around the training ground. After all students left the classroom, I approached the bald teacher alone, not expecting him to recognize me. I tactfully mentioned feeling unwell, but I actually just didn't want to participate in physical training. The bald teacher snorted coldly, saying the principal mentioned I was valedictorian, wondering if this intensity was insufficient, and since it was the first day of training, asking if I wanted to try training with the star class. At this moment, I could only curse that dead old woman principal in my heart. I could only laugh awkwardly, explaining I felt unwell and wanted to use the restroom, while praising the teacher's excellent arrangements. So I had no choice but to run with everyone else. With poor physical condition, I kept cursing under my breath. Chloe approached with concern, asking how my body was. She asked how many laps I had run. Seeing Chloe catching up from behind, thinking she also had poor stamina like me, I told her I had run 5 laps. Chloe mentioned she had already run 9 laps. She encouraged me to keep trying. I couldn't understand how my stamina was worse than a girl's. Academy life continued like this for a week. I encountered the biggest difficulty of my life. A meal in the academy cafeteria actually cost 50,000 yen. This price was ridiculously high. Such expensive prices meant my living expenses were almost gone. So I had been drinking cheap water from the supermarket these past few days to survive. Due to recent exercise, I had also developed muscles. Though more likely, it was because the Sword Emperor helped clear my meridians. Then Chloe came looking for me. I asked what she needed. Chloe mentioned not seeing me in the cafeteria for a week, wondering if I was unwell. I couldn't say I had no money for food. I could only make excuses about not liking food made by others. Chloe suggested buying ingredients at the supermarket to cook dinner together. Having not eaten for days, I agreed immediately. Along the way, I bragged about my decent cooking skills. After arriving at Chloe's dormitory, I discovered the refrigerator was full of seafood. As a former sashimi chef, I couldn't help wanting to show off my skills. But using a kitchen knife might activate the sword god's blessing. I asked Chloe if she had a longer knife. Chloe directly brought out a Japanese katana. I had no choice but to decide to use the kitchen knife. After activating the sword god's blessing, I just needed to complete the cooking within the 30 seconds of the painless blessing. I was known as the nation's fastest knife master. I used only 21 seconds to remove scales, gut the fish, debone it, and slice the meat. Chloe praised how delicious the food was. She volunteered to wash the dishes. Hearing the clanging sounds, I felt like Chloe had never washed dishes before. Looking at the moon outside the window, I couldn't help humming. Then a breeze blew, scattering the diary on the table to the floor. My attention was drawn to it. It read, "Someone helped me in today's placement exam. I want to repay him in the future." As I decided to pick up the diary for him, another breeze blew. The person who saved me is in the same class as me. His name is Gioma. My heart pounds, and I dare not talk to him. I thought this little girl was cute, not expecting the reason for not daring to talk was this, so I couldn't help flipping a page of the notebook. It was densely filled with, "I love you, I love you, I love you." Even I was shocked by its contents. Then Chloe seemed to discover I was reading her diary. "Did you see it?" At this moment, Chloe pulled out a knife from somewhere. When heroes receive everyone's adulation and become power holders, they might be corrupted by power and turn evil. This is when shadows are needed. A shadow's job is to eliminate corrupt heroes in the darkness. Children who become shadows receive mental modification and emotion removal from birth. Continuous training eventually turns them into killing machines. The girl first drew blood at age 15. Chloe was educated from childhood to become a shadow. Long-term continuous training led to her mental distortion. Chloe, who had completely lost emotions, came to Jinghua Academy, where students are assigned classes based on ability. Chloe's true strength could at least reach dragon grade, but because she belonged to a shadow family that always operated in darkness, she could only be assigned to the worst common grade class, which was also an agreement between the family and academy. Upon enrollment, her orders were not to do anything conspicuous, and even so, Chloe could only accept, until she met a certain boy. That happened during the placement exam. Chloe, feeling fearful and helpless, was saved by a boy. She had given up struggling but was still rescued. When she thought this was her fate, an indescribable heat boiled in Chloe's heart. The boy before her was wielding a sword, still wielding a sword to protect her. This reminded her of the fairy tale book she secretly hid as a child. It was a story of princes and heroes. A prince rescuing a princess locked in a castle. Her face blushed slightly. Her heartbeat quickened, and an inexplicable emotion arose. Chloe thought it was love, after being caught peeking. Chloe herself was glaring at me fiercely. I could only scratch my head and laugh dryly. The scene became awkward for a moment. I didn't know where things went wrong. Maybe it was peeking at her notebook, or I shouldn't have come to her house for dinner in the first place. I asked Chloe again if she didn't think tonight's moon was beautiful. Seeing her remain silent, I prepared to take the opportunity to slip away. Chloe questioned whether I saw it. My gaze fell on the diary on the table. I had a flash of inspiration and explained to him that I saw reference books. Chloe directly asked if I read the diary. Although I kept denying it, she still exposed me. After this, Chloe pulled out a knife from somewhere. I was surprised at what Chloe was trying to do. Looking outside the window, this was the 4th floor. Jumping down was definitely not an option, and the exit was behind Chloe. At this moment, Chloe had already picked up the knife and was walking toward me. I understood this type of person very well. Motionless pupils and turbid red eyes. This was clearly a yandere. But Chloe usually had a gentle appearance, completely different from now. I suspected Chloe might have a split personality. Yandere was already troublesome enough as one trait. Now there was an additional split personality. The current Chloe had more killing intent than the twin brothers during the entrance exam. If I didn't take action, I'd probably die here. The kitchen knife was in the kitchen. It was too late to get it now. Seeing Chloe already attacking in my direction, I spotted a utility knife behind me. Chloe rushed at me with a knife. I had to grab the utility knife, quickly sliding out the blade. The sword god's blessing activated. Chloe slashed at me. I also swung the knife at Chloe. I aimed at Chloe's long hair. With a swoosh, the battle ended. After this, the unconscious Chloe woke up on the bed. She was still looking for where Giamma was. Her memory was still stuck at washing dishes while secretly watching Giamma's back. Discovering the important knife was still beside her. She breathed a sigh of relief, because she would lose consciousness every time she held the knife. Family members told her not to deny her talent. Chloe suddenly banged her head against the pillow. She even wondered if she said something wrong during her memory loss. She discovered the utility knife on the floor. There was also cut hair on the ground. She thought she might have used the utility knife to cut her hair earlier. She also found hair in the trash can, thinking Giamma helped clean up the garbage before leaving. Thinking of such gentle Giamma made her even more unable to bear it. She must write it down. Write, "I love you" once more. Outside the dormitory building, I couldn't help but dry heave. This was the side effect of using the painless blessing for 5 extra seconds, directly vomiting up dinner. Hungry and weak, I could only find a place to rest. I couldn't understand what was wrong with Chloe. Ordinary swordsmanship aims to defeat or subdue opponents, but Chloe's swordsmanship purely targeted vital points. If I hadn't fought back earlier, I would have probably had my neck severed. In the recent battle, when my life was threatened, I reflexively slashed at her neck. Fortunately, the utility knife wasn't long enough and only cut her hair. I also helped tidy up her room when leaving, so she probably won't blame me. When I first transmigrated into the game, I still had ambitions to dominate. But the limitations of my blessing extinguished my ambitions. The miracle blessing is the game protagonist's exclusive blessing. Also the only epic level blessing in the game. The blessing is simple. Save the world from the Demon King. The game protagonist is also chosen by both the Holy Sword and Demon Sword. While I can only use kitchen knives, the actual gap doesn't need consideration. When playing the game before, I understood too little about it, only knowing the protagonist and important character storylines with little knowledge of other aspects. The protagonist awakened his blessing late and would enter school to begin the storyline. Most importantly, I had never played through to this game's ending before giving up. Now I could only follow the game's storyline. The game's plot becomes very dark starting from the 3rd year. Discovering the hero's birth, demons attack Jinghua Academy. Demons and humans engage in great war. I don't know how this garbage game turned into such a storyline. Many game characters I liked died later. Unable to accept this, I directly deleted the game. Now I don't know if I'll also die in this game. To survive 3 years from now, I can't sit idle. Anyway, the game protagonist will save the world. I just need to protect myself and stay alive. I also need to avoid being selected to fight demons. I must reduce usage of the Sword God's Blessing. Checking the system window, I found the Sword God's Blessing had leveled up. There was also an additional synchronization rate of 1.5% beside it. I tried clicking on another question mark blessing, but the system indicated insufficient permissions. However, I confirmed that my status bar indeed had an additional blessing. I felt I couldn't always rely on the Painless Blessing and Sword God's Blessing. I must create other possibilities. Next month there's a midterm exam. The reward is the Long Sword Spring Rain, which can be used until graduation. The key is its convenient size won't trigger the Sword God's Blessing. Then a voice interrupted my thoughts. This voice claimed this spot was hers, and this person was Abel. She seemed to have just finished exercising and was quite hot. I just kept staring at her like this. I didn't seem to hear what she said. Abel told me to give up the seat, because I had spent money specifically for her when playing the game before. I couldn't help but lose focus looking at her face. I couldn't understand why I had to give up a public academy chair to her. Fearing problems with the game storyline, I thought about avoiding her in the future. But she's really beautiful. My gaze unconsciously followed her. Then Abel mentioned that this place was comfortable for stargazing, and I thought she discovered me peeking. Such a casual personality made me doubt whether she was really the Sword Emperor's granddaughter, Abel. She even rejected the game protagonist. Abel confirmed whether my weapon was a sword, and I asked how she knew. Abel explained it was what grandfather said, and that swordsmen have different eyes. She also extended her personal treasure sword, asking if I wanted to try holding it. I directly refused. Abel pouted with a sulky expression. I questioned once again whether she was truly the aloof girl Abel from the game. Abel solemnly asked if I knew who she was. No one at Manhwa Academy should be unfamiliar with the Sword Emperor's granddaughter. I had no choice but to admit that I did indeed know her. Then Abel mentioned that while I knew her, she didn't know me. I sensed that Abel was trying to get me to reveal my name. I could only make excuses to avoid telling her my name. Abel then suspected I was a demon spy, reasoning that I was lurking in such a place in the dead of night. I felt helpless about this accusation and could only tell her I was exercising, and it was important breathing exercises at that. At that moment, I noticed numerous scars on Abel's hands. She hastily hid her hands behind her back. I could see that she was truly working very hard. Abel spoke about how, possessing the Sword Emperor's bloodline, she must be the most perfect and outstanding existence. If she showed even the slightest flaw, she would be attacked by everyone. Since birth, the recent placement exam was the first time she had lost to someone, so she was curious about who had defeated her. Hearing this, my heart remained relatively calm. Abel then said that when she encountered that top student, she would definitely beat him half to death. At this point, I couldn't help but shiver and hastily told Abel there was no need to be so ruthless. Abel explained it was all because of that person who didn't attend the top student oath ceremony, leaving her, the second place, standing there awkwardly. The key issue was that her grandfather wouldn't tell her who the top student was. I asked why she was telling me such things. Only then did Abel reveal that it was because you looked very weak. Abel's family motto was to be strict with the strong and merciful to the weak. The classmates in her class were all a bunch of idiots, making it impossible to befriend them. I also understood the reason for her coldness toward the game's protagonist. As Abel was preparing to leave, she seemed to notice something amiss. She asked for my name again, but I still didn't tell her. The next day, I was constantly worried that Abel had already grown suspicious of me. Chloe had already made friends and integrated into the class. I was afraid of encountering Chloe and kept avoiding her gaze. Because I was a special admissions student, many people in the class looked down on me. The other special admission students in the class were also unwilling to communicate with each other. From this perspective, not choosing the advanced class was the right decision. Having played the game, I knew that the new class and Dragon class would form factions and engage in conflicts. There was good news: I could now eat normally in the school cafeteria. The reason was that Principal Medea had given me a top student discount card. I could never repay this kindness even if I kowtowed to her 3 times daily. As long as I persisted this way for 3 years, I could achieve my dream future. The academy professor was lecturing. After the first human-to-demon war 700 years ago, Huajing felt the need to cultivate the next generation of heroes and establish Jinghua Academy with 7 disciples. Knowing this plot, I was drowsy listening to it. The ancestral hero Valor Vaken. After fighting the demon race for 2 years, he finally achieved victory, but he also lost an arm and his combat ability. Both sides in the battle suffered heavy losses. The first human-demon war became the catalyst for both sides to begin a ceasefire. At that time, Jinghua Academy was established to train heroes. Humans and demons signed a peace treaty, and 700 years had passed. Students who had never experienced war couldn't appreciate the preciousness of peace. Only I knew that this 700-year peace was about to end. Even if it would affect the plot development, I still wanted to tell Principal Medea about this matter, although I didn't know what choice she would make. In the original plot, due to her own blessing, Medea discovered this anomaly very early. To protect the students, she was the first to enter the battlefield. She became the first 7-star hero to be killed by the demon race. Although I hadn't played through this part of the plot before deleting the game, I learned about this through online guides. I would have been better off not knowing about this. After class, a commotion erupted outside the classroom door. I instinctively checked the date on my phone. Today was May 5th. Students all gathered around. If I remembered correctly, today was his enrollment day. He was the protagonist of this world, Leon van Leehart. The 700-year-long peace would end starting from this day. In my eyes, this guy was just a disgusting fellow, a pretty boy who relied on his looks, and a man who attracted women like a magnet. If this were an adult game, the protagonist Leon should have died before battling the Demon King. The key was that he attracted female characters like a succubus. The women attracted to him included the Spear Saint's niece Rachel, the Swordman's daughter Zoki, the Sword Emperor's granddaughter Abel. The more I looked at him, the more disgusting he seemed. Miracle's blessing. In the game, the protagonist Leon Van Leehart was one of the first to be sent out to subjugate the Demon King 3 years later. It was almost like a forced dispatch. Even the ancestral hero Valor Vacan had only sealed the demon army's first legion. I couldn't imagine just how powerful the demon race was. It couldn't be some crazy plot where the protagonist loses, could it? At that moment, the protagonist Leon seemed to notice my gaze. He looked directly at me. He even smiled at me. I was completely thrown off. In that instant, even I felt that this was indeed Miracle's blessing. The protagonist would solve all problems. This protagonist indeed looked very reliable, and even I was convinced by just one of his smiles. The academy training ground. I was here practicing sword swings. When using oversized swords, the sword god's blessing wouldn't cause trembling. To avoid long-term dependence on a blessing with side effects, I needed to learn some swordsmanship. At this time, Chloe approached me, asking if she had done something wrong. It wasn't anything major. I had nearly been killed by her, but I couldn't say that. I could only tell her that nothing had happened. To stay quietly at the academy, I tried to avoid making enemies for myself. Although she had lost consciousness at the time, I had touched her sword. I knew very well that the sword was filled with sadness and seemed to be pleading for me to save her. Yet the blade's killing intent was terrifying. If used with the intent to kill, she would be more dangerous than the Mao brothers. At this point, Chloe invited me to have dinner at her home. She said she would personally cook for me. But when I thought of her drawing her sword, it would be better to refuse. However, her sincere and pleading eyes made me reluctant to refuse. If I agreed, my head might end up opening its eyes in a freezer next time. So I thought of a compromise. That was to ask her for a favor, and this was something only she could do. Hearing this, Chloe immediately perked up. I then asked her to teach me swordsmanship. I indeed needed a swordsmanship teacher, and Chloe was frighteningly strong. After that, I would avoid her every night before sleep, and when encountering terrifying events, I had action guidelines prepared. This was also a strategy I had prepared in advance to survive at the hands of a yandere. At this time, Chloe arrived at the training ground according to our agreement. We had agreed on 8 o'clock, but she arrived at 6:30. She was a full hour and a half early. Scanning Chloe's attire, I felt a strong sense of incongruity. When she wore the school uniform, you couldn't tell, but she actually had a surprisingly good figure, and even abs. I understood why she was so strong. I then handed the wooden sword to Chloe. When she asked why we weren't using real swords, I wondered if I'd heard wrong or said something wrong. This wasn't a life and death duel. Why would we use real swords? Holding the sword, Chloe murmured about how gentle the sword demon was. She seemed like a different person as she examined the wooden sword in her hands. She just swung the sword casually, and I seemed to hear the air being cut. I couldn't imagine how much strength she possessed. Would I be cut up like a watermelon? I opened the status window again to confirm the sword god's blessing. I still didn't understand what this assimilation rate meant. The question mark sections were still unviewable. Chloe looked at me with a strange expression as I stood there in a daze, asking what was wrong. They apparently couldn't see the status window. If I continued spacing out, it might cause misunderstandings. Before training, I asked Chloe to go easy on me. In my previous life, I was at least a practical fighter. To reach the pinnacle in any field required not only hard work, but also sacrificing everything. The reason I adapted to academy life so quickly was also due to this. At this moment, Chloe had already assumed her stance. She attacked me directly. Her speed was so fast I couldn't see it clearly. Her blade techniques were still those deadly strikes. Having barely dodged the first move, I couldn't help but curse internally about the promised restraint. Chloe gave no quarter, and even demonstrated a hand-switching technique. The speed was too fast, catching me completely off guard. Her strength was so great that it even numbed my arms. When I was preparing to seize the opportunity to counterattack, Chloe had already begun her third assault. I wondered if she was really holding back at all. Before I could react, Chloe slashed at me again. I was still wondering if I'd survive taking this hit. With a crack, my wooden sword already had a fissure. I hastily retreated. Chloe's attack seemed unstoppable as she continued her fierce assault. But the wooden sword couldn't withstand it. It was directly cut in half and flew away. I was completely no match for Chloe. Chloe hurriedly apologized, saying she had intended to be gentler but still broke it. At this moment, her gaze seemed to see something she shouldn't have seen. The system prompted, "You have met the armament conditions." Bug occurred due to armament destruction. Suppressive force began adjusting the user's personality. Personality decreased. You have awakened the sword god's blessing. Chloe looked at this scene in shock, and I had already lost consciousness. I seemed to return to a certain place in my memories. This place was somewhat like the kitchen from my previous life. I appeared to be handling seafood. I casually selected a Chinese cleaver. The system prompted that I could not use this knife. I chose a long knife but still couldn't use it. Now only the sashimi knife was usable. I thus grasped the sashimi knife. Master told me that as long as I cut down, I could make good cuisine. System prompt: you have awakened the sword god's blessing. Chloe was still asking what was wrong with me. Having lost consciousness, I slowly walked toward Chloe, then suddenly flashed and charged at Chloe. Chloe hastily raised her sword to block my attack. She was still calling my name, telling me to wake up. I knocked Chloe flying with one strike. The impact force from this strike sent Chloe tumbling to the ground. Chloe also realized that I seemed like a completely different person. I slashed at Chloe again. Chloe could only retreat backward. I, controlled by the blessing, had completely lost consciousness. Chloe, affected by the previous impact, was already unable to dodge the next attack. Chloe was still calling my name, sword demon, sword demon. I grabbed the wooden sword and struck at Chloe. Chloe was still trying to wake me up. Just as this sword was about to kill her, Chloe loudly called out my name, Gioma. At this moment, I still didn't know what was happening. There was actually a fish I couldn't cut. Most importantly, this fish kept dodging on the cutting board. At this time, Master ordered me to quickly cut it into sashimi. But there seemed to be a voice constantly calling out to me. This voice restored my consciousness. I remembered that my name was Gioma, and the person calling out to me was precisely Chloe. Having regained consciousness, I directly threw away the broken wooden sword. Chloe thought she was done for. At this moment, I caught Chloe, who was about to fall to the ground, and told her that today's sparring session was over. Chloe asked with concern what had happened to me. I thanked Chloe for the sparring and turned to leave. Chloe looked at this scene with confusion. After Gioma left, since the placement exam, Chloe had felt a strong sense of incongruity about Gioma. That power had exceeded common sense and was incredibly bizarre. It wasn't pure technique, it was like the blade itself. Even when Chloe unconsciously used all her blessings, she was no match for him. And he was still wielding a broken wooden sword. At this time, a voice asked if Chloe looked very happy. Chloe immediately recognized the other party. It was Chloe's brother, Noth. Noth questioned why Chloe had been mixing with that commoner since enrollment. Chloe told her brother not to speak about him that way. Noth warned Chloe that if she continued associating with Gioma, the family would kill him. Hearing this, Chloe actually felt relieved. She told Noth that even if the entire family came, they wouldn't be a match for the Gioma. Noth fell into contemplation as he watched Chloe's departing figure. I was now certain of one thing. The power I had obtained was neither a god's blessing nor a god's protection. It should be a curse. To avoid relying on the sword god's blessing, I had to acquire a new weapon. The sword god's blessing would manipulate my body, control my consciousness, and make me go berserk. If it hadn't been for Chloe's calling at that time, something irreversible might have happened. It was her calling that caused the sword god's blessing barrier to shatter. Only after throwing away the wooden sword did I regain consciousness. This was thanks to Chloe awakening my consciousness. However, it was also because she had severed my wooden sword that this incident occurred. I was afraid of awakening the sword god's blessing again, and hurriedly left. This was an ability exchanged for lifespan. I was a transmigrator, and with this blessing, I could continue staying in this world. I just wanted to live an ordinary life in this world. I used to think that as long as I resolved some minor incidents, I could live a peaceful life. Now I finally understood what existed within my body. What wanted to devour my rationality wasn't a blessing. What wanted to devour me was a curse, a heaven-defying technique. 3 days later at Jinghua Academy, the yandere Chloe was interacting with classmates. But she always looked melancholy, because Gioma hadn't attended class for 3 days. She had even knocked on Gioma's dormitory door but only heard sounds of pain. Chloe forcibly suppressed her impulse to break down the door and left. She liked how Gioma looked when he was thinking with his chin propped up. Afraid of being seen as a gloomy woman, she was very careful even when speaking. The next day, the bald instructor announced that due to rain today, self-study would replace training. The bald instructor noticed that Gioma still hadn't come to class today. He guessed there must be some hidden circumstances. As an excellent educator, he should trust that his students could overcome difficulties. At this time, a figure appeared at the classroom door. This person was me, Gioma. At this moment, my face already bore several sword scars and even my hair had gained some white strands. Chloe was surprised by my appearance. I apologized to the bald instructor for being late today. The shocked bald instructor told me to quickly take my seat. Classmates all discussed what had happened to me. In their eyes, I seemed to have become more handsome than before. After class, Chloe found me. She asked with concern what had happened to me. The reason for not attending school for several days. Was it because of that sparring session? I explained to Chloe that it wasn't about that, just that I wasn't feeling well. Chloe was relieved that it wasn't about that incident. During the 3 days I didn't attend class, I was tormented by the blessing's side effects to the point of agony. I had been hiding in my room without eating or drinking. The price paid for using an incomplete blessing far exceeded my imagination. Looking in the mirror, I discovered that part of my hair had turned white. At this moment, Chloe seemed very remorseful because she was the last person to spar with me. To resolve her guilt, I prepared to take her to eat. I also told her I wanted to eat food she made herself. She jumped up with joy. Chloe asked what dish I wanted to eat. I mentioned that I hadn't eaten fish in a long time. At this moment, a wave of killing intent swept past me. I hastily searched for the source of this killing intent. After looking around, I found the direction of this killing intent. A masked man appeared before my eyes. Chloe looked at him in shock. I asked Chloe if she knew him. I clearly sensed that this person had ill intentions. We looked at each other. I directly told him to speak up if he had something to say. At this moment, Chloe suddenly stepped in front of me and questioned why he had come here. Although Chloe appeared very assertive, her voice was trembling. The man questioned Chloe about whether she would defy Adito's rules to stay with him. Chloe argued that Adito had nothing to do with her anymore. The man ordered Chloe to abandon the commoner beside her and return to Adito. Hearing this, Chloe immediately burst out with powerful killing intent, ordering the man not to speak such insulting words about the sword demon. This powerful killing intent swept through the entire classroom. I was grateful that everyone had gone to eat. I also remembered the Adito family. They were a female group responsible for infiltration and assassination. Although not as strong as other hero families in direct combat, no one could surpass them in assassination techniques. So Chloe was from the Adito family. The person in front of me was Chloe's brother. I could understand his expression, accustomed to killing. The Adito family existed to maintain order, finding and killing internal enemies. Did she also want to live an ordinary life? Like my sword god's blessing, she was born into an assassin family and wasn't allowed to live a normal life. She could only be an emotionless killing machine. I wasn't a hero, couldn't become a hero, and didn't want to be a hero. Even if I couldn't save the world, I could at least save her. I decided to have a private conversation with Chloe's brother. Although the sword god's blessing was like a curse, this power wouldn't let me lose to anyone. Since I couldn't escape the sword god's blessing, I could only dominate it. Your name is Nuth, right? Come outside with me. Let's talk with our swords. 15 minutes before the duel began, Principal Medea told me that even in a virtual world, while the body wouldn't be injured, the spirit could still be harmed. I didn't care. As long as I won, that was enough. Sitting in the waiting room, I could hear the noisy crowd outside. The yandere Chloe looked remorseful. I told Chloe not to worry. Hadn't she lent me a weapon? Chloe mentioned that her brother was very strong, a rare genius in the Adito family's history. He had no rivals in hidden weapons and was called the pinnacle of nighttime techniques at age 14. I was speechless about who had come up with that name. No matter how I tried to avoid it, I could only choose this path. Master once said that those who grip the blade are swordsmen for life. The broadcast then announced for the two sparring students to enter the training ground. Before leaving, I told Chloe that there were many geniuses in this world, but they would all be defeated by me in the end. I came to the arena carrying 2 sashimi knives. Students were cheering. I hadn't expected a simple sparring match to draw so many people. Even people from the star-level class had come. The protagonist team from the game was staring at me, especially the Sword Emperor's granddaughter, Abel. Their behavior undoubtedly increased my pressure. My opponent Noth questioned why I was participating in sparring with such broken knives. He also released killing intent toward me. I calmly told him that masters don't complain about poor equipment. Hearing this, Noth directly drew his armament. Without doubt, this was S-class armament, and there were 2 of them. S-class armament was somewhat laughable, but I was also serious. After all, my armament consisted of a sashimi knife plus a rose knife. The announcement declared the sparring match to begin. The protagonist team all watched the scene. Subspace expanded. The Sword God's Blessing and Painless Blessing activated simultaneously. Everyone couldn't believe the battle scene before them. They couldn't even see the confrontation between the two. The speed was too fast for the naked eye to follow. The Spear Saint's niece, Rachel, also cast an interested gaze toward me. Abel couldn't believe how the weakling from that night could be so formidable. Noth launched a horizontal slash at me, which I directly broke with 1 strike. He followed with another cleaving attack, which I easily blocked. Noth casually traced 2 sword strikes, but they only left 2 sword marks on the ground. Noth then launched a killing blow at me, his finishing move, 3-legged bird. When Noth thought the battle was over, he couldn't find my figure nearby. Without doubt, I had avoided his finishing move. The audience discussed how second-year Noth had the upper hand. Only Abel could see that I hadn't launched any attacks. Noth also realized something was wrong, because even using all his strength and blessings, he couldn't defeat me. The 2 knives were too heavy, preventing me from using my full strength. I threw down 1 sashimi knife. Noth still wondered why I was discarding a weapon. I gripped Chloe's rose knife with both hands. I faced Noth like this. He completely didn't understand what I was doing, but he burst out with powerful pressure and prepared his defense. With just a whoosh, a flash of light pierced through. I entrusted my body to something that wanted to devour me, the Sword God's Blessing. May God bless you. This strike severed one of Noth's hands. Noth still couldn't see clearly what had just happened. Whether it was a blessing or a curse, I didn't care. My peaceful academy life was also gradually fading away. Just moments ago, I received the Sword God's Blessing and cut Noth to pieces with just 1 strike. The subspace then closed. Everyone gasped, because I had defeated Noth. Abel and Rachel watched this scene in shock. The broadcast announced the end of the subspace sparring match. Now it was completely irreversible. I still couldn't get used to fighting others with sashimi knives. The subspace performance was truly excellent. As Chloe had said, Noth was indeed very strong, with strength accumulated through actual combat. Fortunately, I had the Sword God's blessing. The broadcast also announced that the winner was first-year Wolf class's Gioma. It especially emphasized that a first-year student had defeated a second-year student. I had to complain that these people never forgot to promote me at times like this. There was no choice. This was the path I had chosen. At this time, new class students were still discussing. Someone from the Adito family had lost to a first-year guy. Through the recent broadcast, Abel also learned that my name was Gioma. Now the entire Jinghua Academy was discussing Gioma's matter. Gioma had defeated Noth with just one strike. This incident was a huge blow to Abel, because she also couldn't see clearly how Gioma had moved. The key was that he didn't use traditional swordsmanship or proper armament. Instead, he used 2 kitchen knives. Abel was the Sword Emperor's granddaughter, so she took pride in swords. She really hadn't expected that using such knives could make someone so strong. At this moment, Abel remembered something else. She had once told Gioma that she was curious about who the top student was, and said that if she knew, she would definitely defeat him next time. Now thinking about it, the top student was Gioma. Thinking of this, Abel trembled all over. Gioma was stronger than her. What had that guy been thinking when he looked at her that night? Getting angrier as she thought about it, Abel slammed the table and shouted about what he had been thinking. This slam startled Rachel nearby. Abel hastily explained that nothing was wrong, nothing at all. Rachel looked suspicious. She explained again that she just felt unwell, but Rachel seemed determined to get to the bottom of it, first asking if Abel was hungry. Then, if she had brought weapons? Then if she needed to use the bathroom? Abel could calmly deny all 3 questions. Finally, she asked if Abel was thinking about men. Abel blushed as if she had been caught red-handed. Rachel immediately burst out laughing, so Abel was a woman after all. She had thought Abel would never fall in love. The blushing Abel vehemently denied it. Rachel asked who that guy was. Let me guess. Is it Leon? His face is quite handsome. Hearing Leon's name, Abel remained unmoved. Rachel also remembered that Abel seemed to dislike Leon. She then asked if it was yesterday's sparring special admission student, that black-haired one. Abel, having been guessed correctly, directly looked away. Rachel was certain it was this person. She immediately pulled Abel to set off. Abel asked where they were going. To find him, of course. At this time in Wolf class, Rachel pulled a reluctant Abel over and shouted in the classroom that they were sorry to disturb everyone. Students were all stunned. Abel shyly suggested they should go back first, but Rachel acted as if she hadn't heard and was still looking for a good position. She quickly found a desk with a good view. She directly stood on top of it. She didn't forget to shout about where the black-haired boy was. A student reminded Rachel that standing on someone else's desk randomly was a bit too much. Rachel asked if he could forgive her once for the sake of her being pretty, and this student immediately agreed. This operation gave Abel a headache. Rachel quickly found Gioma, but found something strange. A girl was smiling happily beside him. Rachel guessed she might be his girlfriend. Good. Having a girlfriend was actually a good thing because it made things more interesting. She even loosened her tie. Chloe, who had been smiling happily the previous second, changed her expression the next second, because she saw Rachel blowing air in Gioma's ear. Both Abel and Chloe were stunned. Rachel then sat down on the desk. I was also woken up by Rachel's commotion. As soon as I woke up, I saw Rachel greeting me. Are you called Gioma? I was confused about why Rachel was here. She mentioned that she hadn't noticed yesterday how handsome I was. The yandere Chloe directly grabbed Rachel's hand and questioned what was going on. Chloe was about to switch personalities again. I hadn't expected her to pull out a utility knife in the classroom. This was a combination I hadn't seen even in the game. I really couldn't understand what was happening. At this time, Abel came over and pulled Rachel away. Rachel said they were just greeting each other, no big deal. She then looked at Chloe. She even patted Chloe's head, saying that adults were talking and children shouldn't interrupt. And children shouldn't hold such dangerous things. After saying this, Rachel prepared to continue chatting with Gioma. Chloe unhesitatingly slashed out with the utility knife. Both Abel and I were stunned. Rachel seemed to notice something and instinctively turned around. She unsurprisingly caught Chloe's hand, small in stature and a bit petty. Abel nearby, afraid things would escalate, hurriedly called out to Rachel. Even so, she remained unmoved. She directly threw Chloe out. Chloe flipped several times in the air before landing steadily. The classroom spectators all cheered. In the face of overwhelming power, any technique was useless. The power supremacist family's legitimate heir, the Spear Saint's niece Rachel. She then asked if that little brat was my girlfriend. I directly denied it. Chloe nearby stared at me with cold, piercing eyes, but no meant no. After thinking it over, I could only utter 2 words, friend. I still didn't understand the situation. Why was Abel here too? The previous scene had been too chaotic, and I hadn't noticed she had come as well. I asked why the 2 of them had come here. Rachel explained that Miss Abel was interested in me, so they came to take a look. The blushing Abel hastily waved her hands in denial, arguing that Rachel had forced her to come. Abel, you obediently followed along. I thought you wanted to come too. For a moment, Abel was speechless. The classroom audience was growing larger. Abel, averting her gaze, explained that there seemed to be some misunderstanding. She hadn't said she wanted to come, but I felt that if she wanted to come, she could just come directly. I told them that if there was nothing else, they should leave quickly because I wanted to sleep. Both Abel and Rachel looked shocked. Rachel even took my arm and said she liked me. She also invited me to come to her room after class. Hearing this, Chloe immediately shouted loudly to get away from the Gioma. Rachel burst out laughing and asked Abel if she had heard that, but Abel was glaring at her from behind. Seeing this, Rachel could only bid me farewell. See you next time. I could only tell her not to come next time. She didn't forget to wave goodbye to me as she left. I lay down and prepared to continue sleeping. At this time, Abel slowly stopped and turned around. She looked at me from afar one last time. Only then did she reluctantly withdraw her gaze. Outside the classroom, Rachel hadn't expected Gioma to have such an attitude. She sensed something from those dark eyes. A feeling like her throat was being cut. Thinking about it now still gave her chills, completely different from the useless classmates she had encountered since enrollment. She had originally just wanted to tease him but discovered this unexpected harvest. The Spear Saint family had always married outstanding warriors through generations. In some ways, he was a desirable resource. No wonder the unshakable Empress would be moved. Rachel suddenly turned around and apologized to Abel. Abel said she didn't need to apologize for what just happened. She should apologize to the Wolf class students instead. But she wasn't apologizing for those two things. Rachel then revealed that she wouldn't give up Gioma to her. Hearing this, Abel was stunned. At this time, on the other side, Noth was muttering like a madman about killing him. He had never lost anyone in his life. He was Adito's genius. He plans to launch a surprise attack tonight to kill Gioma, planning to mobilize all members of the Adito family. Gathering the strength of the entire clan should be enough to take him down. Finally, he will bring Chloe back, because Chloe's potential has already surpassed his own. The moment he pushed open the door, it was as if he discovered a new world. Someone was sitting there eating an apple, and that person was none other than Gioma. After that incident, the yandere Chloe has been in a state of madness. I can feel that she's still angry. She keeps muttering, "Die, die." I have something I need to confirm with her, so I found Chloe. She immediately returned to normal, and I asked her about how Noth was doing. Sister Chloe said brother Noth was admitted to the Academy's affiliated hospital. She hasn't visited him and doesn't know what's wrong. I thought battles in subspace shouldn't cause external injuries. Chloe told me that brother Noth was indeed hospitalized, and she told me not to take this matter to heart. I never expected Noth to be so weak that he couldn't even withstand this level of shock. I suspect he might be plotting something else. From my previous life's experience, the best way to deal with a yandere is to gently pat her head, and that's how I got the location of Noth's hospital room from Chloe. Then I went to Noth's hospital room to wait for him in advance. I took a bite of the apple in the hospital room and asked if the apple was edible. Noth was so frightened he couldn't speak. The Adito family is really wealthy, living in such a luxurious hospital room. Noth questioned what I was doing there. I picked up the fruit knife beside me. Noth thought I was going to eliminate him completely, but I just picked up the small knife to peel the apple. My masterful knife skills peeled the apple skin perfectly. I placed the peeled apple on the table, and told Noth to eat some fruit if he couldn't eat his meals. This angered Noth so much he was ready to draw his knife and fight me. I also stopped at the hospital room door. If you want to seek revenge against me, I'll destroy the entire Adito family. Hearing this, Noth was obviously terrified. Then with a bang, I closed the door and left. The apple I had just peeled also developed cracks. The sound of the apple splitting scared Noth so much he sat down on the spot. The flames of hatred have been extinguished by me. I think Noth should have lost his desire for revenge. This kind of bluffing intimidation is quite effective, because I know the 30-second protection cannot defeat all members of the Adito family. 30 seconds can handle at most 10 people, but that's the worst situation. I still need to try to control myself and not kill randomly. Now I feel like I'm standing in the eye of a storm. I seem to have gotten used to this kind of life. Could there really be something wrong with my brain? Currently, Noth's situation should be resolved. Now the most troublesome thing is the persistent female character Rachel, who actively approached the protagonist in the game. But she's someone who was conquered even later than the game's heroine Abel. I can only take it one step at a time, because midterm exams are approaching. This matter is closely related to me. I need the exam reward Murasam. With it, I can still fight even after the 30 seconds are up. The exam content is to kill magical beasts in groups of 5 regardless of class. Because it's a group task, individual strength is important, but trust between comrades on the battlefield is even more important. Group tasks are troublesome, but if I encounter good teammates, I can ride on their coattails. The magical beast to be killed during the exam is the Earth-level magical beast Fishman. When playing the game, I thought this thing looked disgusting. Although I've been killing fish my whole life, having to kill fish again makes me feel a bit nauseous. I hope it would be mermaids instead. At least I could feast my eyes. I'm also glad that this time the opponents are magical creatures and not demons. I've been in this game world for nearly a month since transmigrating. The ceasefire agreement between humans and demons has lasted for 700 years. Half a century ago, the commander of the Demon Clan's 6th Legion raised the banner of rescuing the sealed 1st Legion commander. He charged to the front lines alone. Humans sent their strongest 7-star heroes to meet him in battle. After a week of bloody combat, although humans won, they still sacrificed 3 heroes. Fortunately, both sides didn't want the situation to escalate. I'm speechless about this. The so-called strongest 7-star heroes of humanity couldn't even handle the 6th Legion commander. Peace has continued until now. I can't imagine how strong Valor Vacan, who sealed the 1st Legion commander alone, really is. I suspect he's not human, and after this there's still a battle with the Demon King who's stronger than Valor Vacan. There are still 3 years left before the war with the Demon Clan begins. Now I can only focus on the upcoming midterm exam. I need to find the other 4 team members first. I'm somewhat of a celebrity at the academy now. Making good use of this should make finding a team easy. But the result seems different from what I imagined. A week has passed and still no one has invited me to join their team. It might be because the last battle was too excessive, causing everyone to fear me. I noticed that Chloe seems to be in the same situation. She's also become an outcast since that day. I found Chloe and learned that she also hasn't found anyone to team up with. I immediately invited her to team up with me, although we still need to find 3 more team members. Chloe readily agreed. I know Chloe's strength is formidable. She should be able to handle quite a few enemies in the 1-hour exam time. While I only have 30 seconds, having her help is like gaining 1,000 troops. At this moment, a voice reached my ears. Rachel called my name in the classroom. She told me she came to play with Gioma. Chloe pulled out a utility knife and kept muttering, "Here comes the big one. Here comes the big one." I told Rachel to leave quickly. I don't have time to fool around with her. But Rachel put on a pitiful expression, saying Gioma was so heartless. I asked her if she could stop talking like that. But Rachel made a fuss, saying she didn't know and couldn't hear. She even collapsed directly onto my desk and asked if I had found teammates for the exam. I had to tell her not yet. Upon hearing this, Rachel immediately invited me to join her team, but I think their team couldn't possibly be short on people. Rachel thinks teaming up with me would lead to interesting events. I declined using the excuse that I had already promised to team up with Chloe. Rachel said that's even better because the team is just short 2 people. If we can't find teammates, we might not get the reward. I looked at Chloe to ask for her opinion. Chloe nodded. So I agreed to Rachel's invitation to join her team. I asked who the team leader was. She mentioned that the leader was a guy called Leon. I was immediately shocked. What sins did I commit in my previous life, working hard for 30 years and still having to encounter this kind of thing? Now I've gotten involved with the game's heroine, although feasting my eyes isn't bad. But getting involved with Leon is another matter entirely. The protagonist's radiance is about to blind my eyes. Now it's too late to change teams, because that damn Rachel has already submitted the application. For the first time in my life, I want to kill a certain woman. At this moment, Chloe came over asking what's wrong, whether I'm thinking about that stinking woman. No, the blonde girl. I had to tell her that being with students from the new class put some pressure on me. Chloe told me not to worry, because no student in the new class is stronger than Gioma. I asked Chloe what time our group meeting was. Chloe said the blonde mentioned it was 6 p.m. at the cafe. After this, Chloe and I came to the cafe. Chloe ordered a milk tea and seemed very happy drinking it. I really can't drink the coffee here, but I can only pretend it tastes good. I have to maintain adult sophistication. This coffee is both bitter, and you can't use the school meal card. I should come here less often in the future. At this time, Rachel and Leon arrived. They brought an unfamiliar guy with them. I immediately recognized this blonde as the game's protagonist. The brown-haired one beside him looks like a little thug. Leon actively greeted me with a handshake, and he said he was deeply impressed by the subspace battle the other day. Having you on the team is reassuring. Leon also suggested that team members introduce themselves first. Leon introduced himself first as Leon Van Ryhart. Looking at his handsome face, I felt life was truly unfair. Rachel nudged the small thug beside her, saying everyone knows her so she won't introduce herself. The brown-haired one introduced himself as Spit Weapon. I feel this Spit must have quite a story. Chloe introduced herself as Chloe Adito, belonging to Gioma. Before she could finish, Rachel looked at her teasingly. This almost made Chloe explode on the spot. But she still held back. Rachel continued teasing, "How restrained. Your self-introduction is too traditional." Finally, I also gave a simple self-introduction. After that, Leon took out his computer and started projecting a map. This is the map of the exam island for the upcoming test. On exam day, we'll be transported there through subspace gates. The subspace here actually exists, so there's a possibility of being killed by magical beasts. The southeastern region has been assigned 3 teams to hunt fishmen. The number of fishmen in the region is fixed. Whichever group kills the most wins. Spit worried whether mermaids might appear. Leon explained that the instructors have checked everything, no need to worry. Chloe asked whether other groups might ambush us. Leon explained that this exam focuses on hunting fishmen. Students fighting each other would result in disqualification. I admire that someone from an assassin family would worry about such things. After this, only Leon and I remained in the room. I just wanted to leave this awkward place quickly, but Leon stopped me and asked, "Joma, where are you from?" He seemed to have asked a similar question before, but this time's question is fundamentally different from that one. I can't read the meaning in his eyes. Does he mean which region I'm from? If that's what he's asking, he could have asked directly during the self-introductions. Deliberately waiting until everyone left before asking must have some reason. At this moment, Leon suddenly apologized, saying he said something strange. "Gioma, I'm wondering if you might be like me, but this game uses H country names, and there's no distinction between countries. Anyone would think I'm from H country." Then Leon said, "Just pretend you didn't hear what I said earlier." After saying this, he prepared to leave. Without thinking, I put my hand on his shoulder. "Leon, where are you from?" If I let him go like this, I'd definitely be too curious to sleep. Leon explained that he's from Germany. I don't understand what this Leon guy is up to. For a moment, I thought this guy was also from another world. I can't be certain that I'm the only one who was reborn into the game. Moreover, he's the protagonist. He has a greater possibility than me, a minor character. Under the protection of the Sword God, my senses became sharp. I activated the Sword God's protection again, silently reciting Leon is a person from here. The Sword God's protection responded, "Leon is a person from here." After awakening the Sword God's protection, as long as I concentrate and touch shoulders, I can hear voices. Every time I continuously activate this ability, my head hurts. Even the painless protection has no effect. The Leon I saw today is the same Leon from when I played the game. Even a skilled actor couldn't perform so authentically. Was he really just asking about nationality? Then I used a search engine to look up information about Leon van Lahart, but couldn't find his documentation. Anyway, I'll only have contact with Leon this once. If this happens again, I'll ask Medea for help. I hint to myself not to think too complexly. I've never wanted this kind of thing to happen, but I'm quite calm when facing this reality. I open the system panel again. The physical level has increased from 5 to 7. The sword size hasn't changed. The mental level is still 3, currently not meeting the synchronization rate conditions. It should have improved after working hard to train the body. After getting Murasame, my abilities should improve somewhat. When the synchronization rate reaches 70%, the offhand condition will be awakened. It feels like complete liberation is about to happen. I've been playing with those siblings all this time. Now what's most frustrating is that I can't figure myself out, and I can't ask others. The system indicates that the minimum activation count for protection has been met. Calibrating activation time. The painless protection activation time increased from 30 seconds to 40 seconds, cooldown time shortened to 12 hours. It wasn't in vain that I suffered so much. Finally something good happened. Day 5 countdown, I was still training. Day 4 countdown, still meeting with team members. Day 3 countdown, Yandere's sister Chloe was still teaching me techniques. Day 2 countdown, Tsundere's sister Rachel pestered me again. Day 1 countdown, I was still training. At this point, I can already cut through sweat with a knife. I marvel that the training results have finally paid off. On the practical exam day, this is the subspace. With this thing, the atmosphere of the entire training ground instantly changed. Team members have already arrived here in advance. Team's Rachel is the main damage dealer. Captain Leon also serves as commander. Team's support is weapon. Team's sub-damage dealer is Chloe. Team's rear guard is Gioma. Rachel has an S-rank weapon, the Sky Piercer halberd. Leon isn't using Balunk yet. My gaze fell on the necklace around Spit Weapon's neck. Rachel said at this moment, "Don't look at it like that. That's a rare S-rank healing type. That's an S-rank healing weapon I spent tens of millions on in the game, and still couldn't get, although the design is a bit strange. But why is it like this?" I unconsciously moved closer to observe, scaring Weapon into thinking I had some intentions toward him. At this moment, the broadcast sounded, now beginning the first semester practical exam for first-year students in 2034 Fent. Everyone was attracted by this voice. This is the instructor reminding, when encountering danger, don't hesitate to flee quickly. Don't forget you're still students, not heroes. If anyone gets injured or gives up, you can contact the instructors at any time. Leon reminded everyone that it's time, get ready, and told everyone not to be nervous, just do your best. The exam is about to begin. Chloe looked dejected. He was still worried about mermaids appearing, because Skopri Island is a region where mermaids appear. I could only comfort Chloe not to worry, the instructors will confirm. Chloe was born on Sicily Island, where mermaid sightings and disaster incidents often occur. Now during the ceasefire with the demon clan, you can only see demons in dungeons. But there are often rumors of mermaid appearances, which means humans haven't mastered the conditions for mermaid appearances. At this time, the instructor reminded everyone to start entering, preparing to open the subspace portal. I touched Chloe's head and comforted her again not to worry. Under my comfort, Chloe also improved slightly. The 5 team members walked into the subspace like this. Rachel, you block that fishman from approaching. Weapon, quickly use healing protection. But at this moment, Chloe somehow hasn't come back to her senses. She seemed to hear Giamma calling her. At this moment, the team members have already started fighting. Chloe realized she seemed to have blacked out just now. Now she can't contact the instructors either, because everyone is in a cave and cell phones have no signal. A terrifying enemy appeared before everyone. It was the humanoid magical creature, Mermaid. At this moment, all team members fell into despair. Before the mermaid appeared, Leon, Weapon, and Rachel were still recovering from seasickness. I don't seem to get very seasick. At this time, a fish with legs appeared. I asked if this was a fishman, but the fishman turned and ran. If all fishmen are this weak, there's no need for me to act, Leon explained. That was just a small fishman. The exam fishmen aren't this size. Chloe went to scout the nearby area for intelligence. The 4 team members cautiously walked through the forest. At this time, Leon said something seemed to be approaching. It turned out to be Chloe stepping on tree branches, jumping down. Chloe explained that the trees are safer. She said there's a cave 500 meters ahead. Obviously, there's something in the cave. There are densely packed merpeople inside, about 60 of them. Leon was still considering whether to go in. I know his hesitation is normal. If we kill these merpeople, we'll probably get first place. But inside the cave, there might be no signal. Losing contact with the outside world, the person deciding this is Team Captain Leon. He arranged in advance for Chloe to scout around the small island, Weapon to handle healing and support. I really can't understand how this kind of small thug is a healer, and I'm responsible for defending the rear. Leon is responsible for command and joining the battle when necessary. Rachel serves as the main damage dealer. She hurled the Sky Piercer halberd in one strike, directly smashing it into the middle of the fishman's bonfire. The fishman still didn't know what was happening. Rachel had already rushed forward. One strike took out 2 fishmen. As the team's main damage dealer, she's completely sufficient. Weapon, as support, gave her buffs. Rachel was too ferocious, killing fishmen who scattered and fled. In a moment, she had killed 20 fishmen. Seeing the scene, both Leon and I were shocked. At that moment, Chloe also activated her blessing. She killed 8 fishmen in one strike. 2 fishmen pounced toward him. He cut them in half with one sword. Rachel and Chloe began competing over kill count like this. Leon and I could only watch this scene in shock. I suspect it's mostly because the conflict in the classroom last time hasn't been resolved. Both of them targeted the same fishman. This fishman also targeted them. The 2 directly chopped this fishman into pieces. After killing the fishman, neither would spare the other with words. I'm glad the 2 didn't actually fight, that's really good. The 60 fishmen were quickly eliminated by these 2. Leon also called for everyone to prepare to leave. From his decisiveness and leadership, he's indeed a person from this world. His previous question about birthplace seems to have been just a simple inquiry. From the results, this exam was basically a free ride. At this moment, an energy-formed laser shot out, directly piercing Leon's arm. Rachel, Chloe, and Weapon were all shocked. I immediately noticed something abnormal. Everyone didn't know what was happening. A monster surfaced in the middle of the water pool. Without doubt, this is a demon mermaid. Everyone couldn't believe a mermaid had appeared. Now, if we take the injured Leon, we definitely can't escape, because there's no signal in the cave and we can't contact the instructors. I could see they had all lost their reason. I immediately ordered Rachel to block the nearby fishman, Weapon, to heal Leon, and told Chloe to quickly go out and call the instructors for help. After a moment of hesitation, Chloe agreed. At this moment, Rachel and Weapon frantically asked what to do. I had to tell them to handle the nearby fishman. In my previous life, I found cutting those small seafood quite boring, because I'm an expert at killing fish. In this world, humans can use protection, while demons can use magic. The game's protagonist, Leon, was defeated by magic in one hit. This is the gap between humans and demons. Even with the sword god's protection, I might not win. The demon boss that required a team to kill in the game, now I have to handle alone. Chloe needs 10 minutes to bring back reinforcements, and I can only resolve this demon within 40 seconds. I haven't seriously made sashimi in a long time. The system indicates the sword god's protection is activated. May God always bless you. Rachel was still struggling with the fishmen. Dealing with these fishmen isn't too difficult. She killed several fishmen in one breath. Now she's running out of stamina. Although Weapon wants to give him buffs, he's powerless. Healing Leon alone is already very taxing. He knows Giamma is powerful, but still can't believe he can fight a mermaid alone. Weapon hesitated whether to stop Giamma from this behavior. The mermaid launched a magic attack first. After dodging, I closed the distance toward it, although I don't know what magic it used. What's clear is that this monster is seafood made of fish and bones. As long as I get close, I can cut it. Unfortunately, I only hit an afterimage. Obviously, its target is the healer Weapon. Just as Weapon was about to be attacked, a sword energy slashed out, cutting off one of its fins. I couldn't deal much damage to it. I sent out 2 more sword energy, but it disappeared directly. The only shortcoming is I can't predict its next move. It keeps attacking the wounded, which troubles me. I had to tell Weapon to continue healing Leon, while I continued battling the mermaid. Weapon remembered the team meeting. He had said, "Heroes are those who sacrifice themselves to protect others and turn despair into hope." But after entering Jinhwa Academy, he couldn't see anyone qualified to become a hero. So he found Rachel, wanting to join this group. He wanted to see the shadow of a hero in Leon. At this moment, he witnessed another scene. Gyoma was battling the mermaid. The mermaid kept launching magic attacks. Gyoma dodged its attacks while also launching counterattacks. The mermaid is a demon with intelligence. It launched an attack toward the side, just as Weapon was about to be attacked again. Its initial target was Leon's side. I appeared again to intercept the mermaid and severed one of its hands. I cursed why every attack was just a little short. The mermaid with its severed arm let out a roar. Only hearing a thunderous sound, a magic beam shot out. Students taking the exam nearby also saw the scene. Obviously, something happened over there. At this time, it started raining heavily. This instructor told them what they saw might be lightning, immediately arranging for everyone to return to the academy. The cave where Gyoma's team was located was collapsed by the mermaid's magic attack. The dark cave was also illuminated. Seeing the light, the fishmen fled in panic. Half the cave collapsed, turning into ruins. I spent 30 seconds and still couldn't seriously injure the mermaid. And it used magic to bury itself under the stones. With a thunderous sound, it flew out from the pile of stones. I took off my clothes, preparing to give it my all, and told Rachel and Weapon to protect Leon. Weapon knew this might be a moment to witness history. Only I knew my protection had 10 seconds left. I must finish it within 10 seconds. I activated the protection again. This time I must resolve it. As long as I swing my sword, I can cut it down. Chloe was speeding up to seek rescue. She would risk his life to save Gyoma. In his eyes, Gyoma is stronger than anyone, but he seems unwilling to fight, always avoiding combat when possible. Only drawing his sword when absolutely necessary. His arrangement was correct. They stayed behind to hold off the mermaid while he sought rescue. Chloe also heard the sound of the cave collapsing. She could only pray that Gyoma was still alive. Chloe quickened her pace once again. In her panic, she kicked a tree root and was about to fall. But she barely managed to support himself with his willpower. In his urgency, Chloe shouted, "Is anyone there? Anyone at all?" At this moment, she noticed someone seemed to be nearby. That was the aura of a fishman. Chloe slashed with his sword, but it was blocked. The person who blocked his attack was Abel. Chloe also realized it was a person, not a fishman. Still in midair, Chloe quickly apologized. She also collapsed from exhaustion. The students thought this was an ambush. This crazy woman suddenly pounced over. Abel also recognized Chloe. About to lose consciousness, Chloe called for help from everyone. On the other side, Weapon watched the battle before him, not knowing if he'd ever see this kind of combat again in his lifetime. Gyoma seemed to be handling a live fish on a cutting board. Facing such a powerful demon, he actually suppressed his opponent. Weapon would never forget this scene. This was completely different from subspace training. Gyoma constantly changed techniques to dodge the opponent's attacks, getting close to the mermaid and then cutting its body. Both were shocked watching Gyoma. Rachel, heir to the spear arts, had never seen this level of combat. At this rate, she might really be able to defeat the mermaid. Just as the two were getting distracted, Rachel called for Weapon to dodge quickly. In the emergency, Rachel had to tackle him down. A laser passed through where Weapon had been standing. Rachel cursed, "At a time like this, you're still spacing out. Do you want to die?" The ground where the laser had passed was left with a deep trench. This unrealistic scene left Weapon deeply immersed, even forgetting the opponent could use magic. Sashimi knives against magic aren't even in the same league. Even with the current advantage, if hit by unavoidable magic, it's over. At this moment, I don't even have time to think about these things. The mermaid charged up magic again and attacked me. Several magic-formed light beams shot out. I had to nimbly dodge these attacks. Unable to avoid them, I used the sashimi knife to deflect them. Even the sashimi knife couldn't withstand the magic attacks. I sent out another sword energy, cutting the mermaid in half, then leaped into the air to deliver the final blow. At this moment, the mermaid suddenly roared. I swung my sword with full force toward it. A mermaid blocked in front of the mermaid, taking this blow for it. The mermaid also charged up magic in its mouth. The distance was too close. I couldn't even react. Weapon was still shouting for me to dodge, but how could I avoid at this distance? Now I seem to be in a vast ocean. I don't know what's happening. The clear seawater reflected a line. This line caught my attention. I found this line becoming clearer and clearer. A voice spoke to me like this: "Swing your sword, and you can cut it down." This line was also getting closer to me. I rotated the sashimi knife in my hand and gripped it once more. I cut toward this line. This strike cut through the magic. The mermaid was also defeated by this strike. After this, Principal Medea said she would personally commend me, defeating the legendary magical creature mermaid single-handedly. But it still had one last breath. twitching on the ground. I directly finished it off. Weapon and Rachel both watched this scene in amazement. First-year Gioma actually killed a mermaid alone. I also fell helplessly to my knees, a mouthful of red liquid churning out. Seeing this, Rachel quickly came forward. At this moment, Leon had also recovered his strength. A voice made Weapon's nerves tense again. He thought the fisherman had returned. It turned out to be Chloe bringing reinforcements back. They also saw the mermaid's corpse on the ground. Everyone was discussing how did it get cut up like this. Most importantly, Gioma was lying in Rachel's arms. Seeing this scene, Abel was very unhappy. She turned her gaze toward Leon, while his own teammate is hovering between life and death. Leon is still pretending to be well-mannered. Thinking about this made him feel disgusted. Abel told everyone, "I've already contacted the academy instructors, they'll arrive within an hour," and asked what happened here. Weapon cursed those damn instructors. Didn't they say they had checked the island? And there's still a mermaid. Abel asked Weapon to explain what happened. Weapon asked back if Abel was ordering him. Hearing Abel clarify this was a request, Weapon boasted that he was an expert at explanations. Then he explained the whole story to everyone. Abel also understood that Gioma alone had defeated the mermaid. Hearing this, she remembered the past. When she was young, her grandfather, the Sword Emperor, had said, "Reality is more authentic than legend." The facts were right before them, and they had no reason to lie. This is completely like a heroic story. Nibelung is the chief disciple of the 10 founding heroes Valor Vaken. Abel is a descendant of the Nibelung family. They are special from birth. This is so-called bloodline. Abel doesn't want outsiders to say she relies on his family, so she desperately works hard. She never thought the gap between herself and Gioma would be so large. Maybe she's just an ordinary person. Abel ordered the healer in her team to treat Gioma. Under treatment, Gioma's wounds quickly improved. She still couldn't imagine that his peer Gioma had defeated a demon alone. Weapon confirmed with Abel whether he had contacted the academy, and told him not to report this incident in detail to the instructors. Although this island is large, demons wouldn't appear without reason. This matter is very suspicious. At this moment, Leon spoke first. "Are you suspecting the academy has demon spies?" Weapon and Abel looked toward Leon. Lacking confidence, Weapon could only explain this was just suspicion and couldn't be confirmed. If Gioma hadn't acted this time, all of Leon's team members would have died here. Humans and demons have been at peace for 700 years. They've never attacked students of Jinhua Academy. This incident could become the spark that ignites war. Thinking of this made Abel shudder. Weapon thought Abel was thinking too deeply, just suspecting the academy has demon spies but can't be certain. Leon proposed, "We can't let outsiders know that Gioma alone killed the mermaid. If the news leaks, he might be targeted by demons. But he did all this and we can't pretend not to know. That would be unfair to him." Abel said, "I'll discuss this with my grandfather, the Sword Emperor." After this, in the academy hospital, I woke up from the hospital bed. I couldn't believe I was still alive. The mermaid launched a charged magic orb before dying. At the final moment when escape was impossible, I saw a line. After cutting that line, the charged magic orb was also destroyed. I'm certain about the magic orb is water. After awakening the sword god's protection, there's an indescribable feeling. After opening the system panel, I found the mental level had increased. The synchronization rate also reached 70%. At this moment, a figure appeared at the door. Principal Medea suddenly pounced over, still muttering, "I must blast those examination instructors away." I was hugged so tightly I couldn't breathe. She kept rummaging through her subspace bag, taking out the midterm exam reward Murasam. I finally obtained the midterm exam reward Murasam. Originally, this should have been formally announced and awarded to you, but the circumstances don't allow it. Medea discovered someone lurking outside, too timid to come in. She immediately ordered the old man to enter quickly. The visitor was Sword Emperor Zieg. Medea even complained that this 70-year-old man was still as shy as a young girl. I also asked what brought the Sword Emperor here. Principal Medea explained the whole situation. They already knew about it. She formally apologized on behalf of Jinhua Academy, as the academy's negligence nearly cost the students their lives. She swore in his capacity as principal that she would find the cause of the demon's appearance. Sword Emperor Zeg also believed that I had saved the students. I said I only did what I could. Medea told me this matter must remain confidential until the truth is found. This incident was indeed caused by internal problems within the academy. Of course, I understood their approach. On the way out of the hospital, Principal and Medea asked Zig if he remembered when they first came to this academy. Unfortunately, Zig no longer remembered. He sighed that 60 years had passed here in the blink of an eye. But this academy has a 700-year history. We only occupied 1/10 of this academy's time. Many events have occurred over these 700 years. But this time, it seems, a powerful force shattered the glass nearby. A layer of energy protected the two of them. This was the furious Medea activating her ability. Before the midterm exams, the instructors submitted reports. There was a possibility of mermaids appearing on the exam island. Therefore, she treated this exam with extreme caution. Sword Emperor Zieg could see that Medea was angry. Medea appeared calm on the surface now. Sword Emperor Zig knew she was truly angry. Medea suddenly changed the subject, asking if Gyoma was very capable, defeating the mermaid single-handedly. She also asked if Gyoma was a genius. Sword Emperor Zig had seen countless geniuses in his lifetime, but they were like meteors that flashed and disappeared. Even his own granddaughter Abel was forbidden from using the title of genius. If there exists a genius in this world, it must be him alone. Perhaps he could really step into a realm that even he had never entered. Thinking of this, Zig unconsciously quickened his pace. He decided to stay at Jinghua Academy for now. Medea knew that the Sword Emperor had acknowledged Gyoma. After this, in Wolf class. The classroom was as peaceful as before. It seems the matter of killing the mermaid hadn't been exposed yet. The first thing I did after leaving the hospital was to find the academy's blacksmith. I had Morisame reinforced again. The blacksmith told me to come back for the sword in a week. At this moment, a voice called out to me. This person was the yandere Chloe. Her leg was injured in the previous incident. Thanks to weapons treatment, her leg would heal in a week. It was wonderful to see her so happy. She told me about the dispute between Principal Medea and the Academy's elders. Thanks to Chloe going out for help, Rachel dealt with many fools, as well as weapons treatment. But what did Captain Leon actually do? I couldn't help but doubt if he could really defeat the Demon King. At this moment, the bald instructor roared for everyone to be quiet. There was an important announcement before class. They needed to introduce a new instructor to everyone. The students thought this wasn't a big deal. The next second, their mouths dropped open. Because the visitor was Sword Emperor Zig. He would also serve as a new instructor to teach everyone. The bald instructor could only tremble on the side. I really couldn't understand what was wrong with this old man. Meanwhile, on the other side, an old man was getting beaten here. He kept apologizing. The woman ignored his apologies and sent him flying again. The one being beaten was an elder of Jinghua Academy, who revealed that the student who stopped the plan was Gyoma. The woman warned him that the 5th Legion commander was furious. Just a while ago, this female demon was still interrogating the elder of Jinghua Academy. She berated him for failing to even capture the hero candidate Leon, and losing a mermaid in the process, plus keeping that old fool Sword Emperor at Jinghua Academy. The elder could only keep apologizing. The female demon still kicked him. The elder was also angry that a mere instructor dared to attack him. At this point, the female demon mentioned that a first-year student had actually defeated the mermaid. This year's students were indeed strong. The elder explained that the mermaid was defeated by one student. The female demon initially thought that person was Leon. The elder then told her that the one who defeated the mermaid was this year's top student, Gyoma. This female demon also recalled who he was. Meanwhile, at the training ground, the instructor was training students. Yandere Chloe was resting on the side due to her leg injury from the previous mermaid incident. I envied her for being injured. At this moment, a voice urged me to run faster. This person was Sword Emperor Zig. I really couldn't figure out what was wrong with this old man. Why was he running beside me? The first Sword Saint was Valor Vakin's capable assistant, and the Nepron family inherited the title of Sword Emperor. So the current Sword Emperor Zig was the strongest human, and during the second human-to-demon war, he became Leon's master. But why was this old man beside me? He should be going to Leon's side instead. However, in the original game, Leon never obtained the title of Sword Saint either. Having the Sword Emperor beside me made me really uncomfortable. It felt like having a poster stuck to my body. The Sword Emperor also reminded me to keep up with him. I felt this old man was getting younger as he aged. Later came practical combat training. The Sword Emperor dumped a pile of weapons on the ground and told the students to use these weapons. One student suggested using their ancestral weapon for practice would be better. The Sword Emperor rejected this idea. The more one relies on weapons, the more one neglects training. They might even mistake the weapon's power for their own strength, so masters don't pick weapons. I agreed with this. The Sword Emperor also told everyone that mastering ordinary weapons greatly increased the chances of advancing at year-end. The students were all excited hearing this. Only I knew everyone was being deceived by him. I also casually picked up a sashimi knife. I felt this old man was constantly watching me. Students began one-on-one sparring, but everyone worried about getting injured outside the subspace. The Sword Emperor told everyone they came here to inherit the ancestor hero's legacy. Only through dangerous training could one grow faster. He also warned everyone not to aim for each other's heads during sparring. Before everyone sparred, he wanted to demonstrate personally. The students were all excited because they had never seen the Sword Emperor's swordsmanship with their own eyes. At this moment, the bald instructor felt he was facing a major workplace crisis. Although he was a top educator at Jinghua Academy, sparring with the strongest human, the Sword Emperor, was still thinking of this. He could only bid farewell to his mother in advance. The bald instructor asked the Sword Emperor to go easy on him. But the Sword Emperor pointed to a specific student instead. This student was me, Gyoma. The students all expected the Sword Emperor to act, but why was the opponent Gyoma? I also didn't know what the Sword Emperor meant. The Sword Emperor asked if my injury had healed. If it had healed, then pick up the sword. How could I possibly spar with the Sword Emperor at this moment? If I insisted on sparring with him, one of us would likely end up disabled. But this guy's instincts craved victory and defeat, considering continued development might deviate from the original story. I had to refuse the Sword Emperor's sparring request. The students all thought Gyoma was probably afraid of being beaten badly. I was indifferent to this. Sword Emperor Zieg also questioned me. How long would I keep hiding my strength? Did I have no pride as a swordsman? When I became the nation's top chef in my previous life, I had always kept my knife in my heart. The Sword Emperor's provocation was meant to force me to act. As I prepared to agree to the sparring, the bald instructor hurriedly stepped forward to stop it. The Sword Emperor knew I had made up my mind. Everyone waited for my answer. I drew the sashimi knife and accepted the Sword Emperor's sparring request. The Sword God's blessing instantly activated. Both the Sword Emperor and Gyoma entered meditation mode. The Sword Emperor confirmed his thoughts were correct. When he was young, a knight had once demonstrated sword energy to him, having reached that realm. So the Sword Emperor had always been watching Gyoma. If it was him, he should be able to lead himself into that realm. In this instant, the two exchanged several rounds. Gyoma and the Sword Emperor each wielded their weapons. He didn't dodge the Sword Emperor's attacks head-on. Instead, he caught the sword with perfect technique. The two continued to clash in this space. The Sword Emperor's sword had been tempered by years, completely different from an ordinary person's sword. This sword slashed toward Gyoma. The students outside still didn't know what was happening. Everyone didn't understand why the Sword Emperor chose a special admission student as his opponent. The two remained in the standoff for a long time. Everyone also noticed something was wrong. Why were they standing motionless? The bald instructor knew they weren't standing still. They had already fought countless rounds. Initially, the bald instructor disagreed with the Sword Emperor sparring with a student. The Sword Emperor proposed sparring through meditation. Gyoma should have stepped into that place. The Sword Emperor was amazed that Gyoma blocked his full power strike. Most importantly, during this meditation period, he was still growing. Thinking of this, the Sword Emperor unconsciously activated his blessing. This was Sword Emperor Zieg's Sword Spirit Blessing. He prepared to unleash a full power strike. This sword energy's pressure blew toward everyone. The bald instructor knew the meditation world was about to be destroyed. Just as the two's duel was about to reach its conclusion, the bald instructor was still thinking this wasn't what the Sword Emperor had promised. This sparring session would definitely draw blood if it couldn't stop now. As the bald instructor shouted loudly, Medea descended from the sky, scolding the Sword Emperor for being a madman. Is it Alzheimer's? After the duel between Gyoma and Sword Emperor, the Sword Emperor kept apologizing to Medea. But Medea was still very angry. She berated the Sword Emperor for having dementia. How could he activate his blessing against a student? Sword Emperor Zieg explained he had no such intention. Actually, he had already lost his rationality and used his full strength. Sword Emperor Zieg apologized to Medea again. Medea knew that Sword Emperor Zieg had never apologized to her in 50 years. But today he had apologized to him twice in one day. The calmed Medea asked the Sword Emperor what was going on. How could he suddenly activate his Sword Spirit's blessing? If she hadn't stopped him, disaster would have struck. The Sword Emperor stated he couldn't gain an advantage without using his blessing. Medea couldn't believe the Sword Emperor Zieg could say such words. She couldn't imagine how talented Gyoma really was. Moreover, Gyoma had already reached the meditation realm. Medea was shocked that the Sword Emperor only reached this realm at 30, while Gyoma reached it at 17. Was this reasonable? Sword Emperor Zieg didn't know how to explain this phenomenon either. Medea also recalled that when she called out to Gyoma earlier, that pressure made even her dignity as a 7-star hero disappear. She felt fear from Gyoma. The last time she had this feeling was when facing the demon race's 6th Legion commander. Why could she feel this fear from Gyoma? Was it because his name contained the word demon, and the Sword Emperor didn't seem to be lying either? Medea asked if the Sword Emperor had lost. The Sword Emperor obviously got flustered and immediately said how could that be possible? Although Gyoma was impressive, he was still lacking. Moreover, he wasn't carrying his full equipment at the time. Medea directly mocked. Wasn't it a certain someone who said masters don't blame their equipment, yet you're making excuses about not having your equipment? You look really pathetic right now. This infuriated Sword Emperor Zieg. Meanwhile, on the other side, the previous battle with the Sword Emperor was too intense. I also woke up from my sleep. That old man was too thirsty for battles. If Medea hadn't intervened, something serious might have happened. After experiencing meditation once, I felt it was very subtle. Meditation mode required high skill and proficiency with weapons. It was said that only masters who had trained with a specific weapon their entire lives could enter meditation mode. In the game Miracle's Blessing M, fewer than 10 people could enter meditation at will. Even the protagonist Leon needed 3 years of training to enter meditation. But why could I enter immediately when even the protagonist needed 3 years? I recalled my 20 years of sword experience from my previous life, plus the situations when I activated the Sword God's blessing each time. I had also gotten used to life here. From previous experience, avoiding trouble only made things more troublesome. Rather than being passively involved in trouble, it was better to take initiative. I decided to try entering meditation again. If I could successfully enter meditation, I wouldn't need to activate the Sword God's blessing for future training. So I began meditating, after trying several times repeatedly. As expected, I entered meditation. However, cracks appeared in the meditation space. A large hand tore through the meditation space. It struck toward me. It tapped on my shoulder. The Sword God's blessing still activated. I still didn't know what was happening. But the sashimi knife in my hand had already turned to ash. I was also pulled back to reality. Meanwhile, on the other side, the elders of the Elder Council were still arguing loudly. Some radical elders had actually cooperated with the demons. Someone proposed investigating the top special admission student Gioma again, because they suspected he was a hero candidate, but the hero candidate should be Leon. Others pointed out that Gioma hadn't even awakened his blessing, yet he defeated the twins. Moreover, Medea had hidden her information. Anyway, the hero must be dealt with. 7-star heroes were enough. Future threats like heroes must be eliminated early, and the Sword Emperor had already entered Jinghua Academy. Since Medea became principal, the Elder Council's influence had greatly diminished. This world only respected 7-star heroes. No one feared the Elder Council that maintained balance. The appearance of a hero would shake the Elder Council's foundation. To protect their power, they needed to establish an enemy. They must find the hero who threatened the Demon King. The Elder who released the mermaid last time feared that Demon Woman and was trying hard to persuade the Elder group. Because that Demon Woman was the Demon race's 5th Legion commander. The other elders were successfully swayed by him. They prepared to give the Adito family orders to handle this matter. At this moment, at the blacksmith shop, I just came here to pick up my sword. But the blacksmith was terrified. This was my new weapon, Murasame. The blacksmith looked very frightened. My Murasame had actually been crafted from B rank down to E rank. The blacksmith said this was his first time encountering such a situation. He believed this sword seemed unwilling to be reforged. The process of reforging this sword was extremely difficult. If it were an ordinary blacksmith, it would likely be forged into scrap metal. Overall, the size was still suitable, but the hardness was only E rank. The blacksmith explained that with enhancement, it could still be used, and he wouldn't charge extra for the enhancement. I was so angry I wanted to kill the blacksmith on the spot. What if the enhancement failed? The blacksmith said that materials that wouldn't fail were needed, but only E rank magical beasts would drop such materials. E rank magical beasts were equivalent to mermaid level. I didn't want to risk my life to enhance a weapon. If this were a game, I could just pay money. I reminded the blacksmith not to forget about the free enhancement, and demanded the blacksmith return the 10 million from the failed crafting. The blacksmith naturally refused to acknowledge this. The enhancement was already free, yet I still wanted 10 million compensation. Seeing the blacksmith's refusal to admit fault, I directly took out the newly crafted sashimi knife to test its performance. The blacksmith actually tried to haggle with me. I didn't want to waste words with him and resorted to physical intimidation. The blacksmith had no choice but to accept defeat. After obtaining the new weapon Murasame, my armament level increased by 2. Considering that using blessings brought physical pain, I still didn't want to use blessings frequently. As my level increased, the blessings also grew stronger, from deadly pain to difficulty breathing. Armament level could be improved by obtaining new weapons or through enhancement. With gradual growth, the possibilities were high. I might even discover the truth of this world. At this moment, Yandere Chloe came looking for me. She had already removed her cast and could walk on one leg without falling. But the bone fractures still couldn't handle vigorous movement in the short term. At this moment, I noticed something stuck to the corner of Chloe's mouth, so I reached out to help remove it. Only after removing it did I realize it was a grain of rice. Chloe seemed to have lost her soul. She collapsed on the spot. I hurriedly helped her up. She also noticed my new weapon Murasame. She couldn't tell this was first grade at all. This made me feel depressed, and Chloe quickly explained she didn't mean it that way. I could only console myself that at least the blacksmith refunded the money and promised free enhancement. Chloe believed Gioma would be strong even with a kitchen knife. I originally had no reason to become stronger, ever since killing the mermaid. I was certain I could kill the ultimate magical beast. The purpose of enhancing weapons was only to improve armament level and reduce pain. At this moment, Chloe felt that the blacksmith who ruined Gioma's weapon was too despicable. All these guys should be killed. Seeing Chloe getting a bit out of control, I quickly patted her shoulder. At this moment, I noticed movement nearby, so I walked straight to the big tree and kicked the tree trunk. Chloe's brother Noth fell right down. I felt these siblings were cut from the same cloth. Noth hadn't expected to be discovered by me. Chloe quickly hid behind me. I didn't hear the sound of metal when he fell earlier. I judged that Noth hadn't brought weapons. I directly asked him what he was doing here. I should have made things clear with you before. Noth said it wasn't about the previous matter. There was something very important. That was, the Academy's Elder Council had commissioned the Adito family to kill you. I was surprised that the Academy's Elder Council had actually appeared. Chloe was also angry that her brother would approach Gioma over such a matter. She quickly told me to hide behind her, but she had already hidden far away. This feeling was a bit subtle. Noth revealed that the Elder Council was currently very persistent about killing you. You must have done something before. The Adito family had temporarily suppressed this matter. They had acted against a student without the principal's permission. But the Adito family couldn't ignore the Elder Council's demands either. If they continued to pressure, they would have to act. Chloe, as a member of the Adito family, also needed to know about this matter. I clearly understood that Noth was still very worried about his sister Chloe. Noth knew that Chloe was happy around Gioma, so please don't let her get hurt. I didn't know what he was talking about. I felt Chloe's leg injury wasn't my fault either. I could only casually agree to his request. Noth also asked how I'd become so strong. I didn't understand what he meant by strong either. Being able to confront danger at any time is what makes one strong. I could only maintain my strength for 1/10 of a day. Strength with weaknesses couldn't really be called strength. Since Noth had revealed his family secrets, I couldn't show nothing in return. I told Noth that your urgency for strength wasn't enough. Although you gained considerable experience in the Adito family, you still lacked real social experience. I didn't even know what I was talking about, but there was no problem. The best strategy was to leave early. After this, in the academy classroom. Now the Elder Council was targeting me. The Elder Council consisted of 7 people. 5 of them were descendants of the disciples of the ancestor hero Valor Vakin. They had great influence not only in Jinghua Academy, but also in this world. They continuously influenced the protagonist for their own power and safety. I really couldn't understand why they were targeting me. Since entering with top grades, I had done too many conspicuous things in the subspace, sparring by defeating Noth, and replacing Leon to defeat the mermaid in the midterm exam. Being noticed by the Elder Council was understandable. I also recalled that during the last mermaid incident, the person they targeted was Leon, not me. I just happened to interfere with them there. Medea said she had hidden this matter, but it was natural for the elders to know about it. Someone in the Elder Council had targeted the hero Leon. This could be understood as the Elder Council colluding with the demons. They didn't just want to hinder Leon, but to kill him. They cared more about their own power than humanity's rise and fall. Having rotted to this extent, I could eliminate the Elder Council now. But the timing wasn't right yet. When the time came, I would eliminate them all. Thinking about these matters made it impossible for me to concentrate on class. Now I needed to enhance my weapon, and enhancing weapons required materials, but I couldn't enter dungeons alone. First, I needed to form a team. If I asked Chloe, she would definitely agree. I preferred not to have muscle-type members like Rachel. I thought of the healer weapon from last time, so I went to Dragon class where weapon was. A burly man nearby was preparing to attack me. I didn't even bother with such a little thug. I warned him to get lost or I'd beat him to death. The burly man raised his fist and struck at me. His movement seemed very slow to me. Weapon appeared and knocked him down with one punch. The students were amazed by the fighting. This burly man immediately lost consciousness. I hadn't expected the healer to be so strong. Weapon knew I was looking for him and suggested we go outside to talk privately. Weapon understood that I wanted to form a team independently and asked him to help recruit members. I would give the rewards to others and only wanted magical beast materials because I couldn't find anyone else besides Chloe. Weapon felt that if not for the Academy's rule requiring 4-person teams for dungeons, you could just solo dungeon. I had to tell him it was a bit difficult. Weapon felt that after killing the mermaid, saying such things was just being modest. Weapon said there was no reason to refuse. He could also accumulate experience. I told him this dungeon was the C-rank Iron Bull dungeon. That dungeon was an ancient one. Currently there were Gioma, Chloe, and Weapon. The last member just couldn't be Rachel or Leon. Weapon mentioned that Rachel had been in seclusion training since her last discharge. Leon was preparing to tackle high-level dungeons with upperclassmen. At this point, Weapon thought of a suitable candidate. This person should still be sleeping right now. Before finding her, we needed to buy something at the convenience store first. Weapon brought me to a certain place. I had never seen such a place in my previous life playing the game. It had a somewhat Japanese-style decoration. There were archery targets filled with arrows nearby. A figure was lying on the ground. Weapon told them to get up quickly. The other person still looked unwilling to move. Weapon whispered something in their ear. The girl immediately woke up. Weapon pointed, "It's on Gioma." The girl rushed directly toward me. She was obviously targeting the bag in my hand. Her movements were agile and she snatched the bag in one go. After that, she lay on me and started eating voraciously. I still didn't know what was happening. She asked if I had more food. In my previous life, when I was drawing cards in the game, a golden light flashed. The only reason I persisted in playing the game was one. That was the blue-haired goddess Abel I had always dreamed of. After spending money, the blue-haired character indeed came. Although she was also blue-haired, something seemed strange. I hadn't expected it to be her. In Miracle's Blessing M, there were many goddesses around the protagonist Leon. Among them, my favorite was Abel, the official designated female lead. although other female leads also had great charm. In the end, it was still the story of Leon and Abel growing and fighting together. I was so infatuated with Abel that I spent money like crazy. I basically ignored other female characters. In the game, they were also losers. She was the character I forgot first and also my first 5-star character. The invincible archer, Ryome Zoki. Seeing I had no sweet bean jelly in my hands, she turned and walked away. I knew Ryome was a strategic character, but she was different from Rachel. Most importantly, she didn't have much story involvement and wouldn't affect the main plot development. At this moment, Ryome asked Weapon what he wanted with her, and casually snatched the sweet bean jelly from his hand. Weapon asked if Ryome knew about Gioma, the one who sparred with the Adito family in the subspace last time. He wanted to form a team to enter the Water Buffalo dungeon. I was powerless to complain about Weapon's way of speaking. Rewards other than water buffalo horns would be split among the remaining people. Ryome walked straight toward me. She also recognized me as the person from the subspace sparring last time, after Ryome's examination. Although tackling the dungeon was no problem, this guy looked a bit weak. I also questioned how someone who was just sleeping could say such things. Ryome made it clear she didn't want to act with someone too weak. Weapon explained he was someone who fought against the Adito family, and most importantly, he was in the midterm exam. Almost. He nearly revealed the last mermaid incident. Weapon ordered Ryome to agree to team up quickly. Ryome said she wasn't a dog. Why should she listen to his command? Weapon roared that someone who drooled at the sight of sweet bean jelly wasn't a dog. What else could she be? He had bought the sweet bean jelly too, so why wouldn't she listen? Watching them argue left me completely bewildered. I really didn't want to beg others to join the team. I had to tell Weapon that since she wasn't cooperating, forget it. Even if we forced her to join, she'd only cause trouble. Let's find someone else. Ryome then mocked, "Seems like you're not in a hurry to enter the dungeon either." After a moment of silence, I could only draw the sashimi knife from my waist. Both of them were stunned. I casually threw the sashimi knife in front of them. This sashimi knife hit the bullseye. The speed was so fast that Ryome couldn't react. I asked if she wanted to try again. Ryome, with a slightly red face, said no need. The next day, Ryome was already waiting for everyone in the group meeting room. She had arrived before the rest of us. I also wondered what was going on. She even greeted me first. It seemed the sashimi knife had been quite effective. Soon the team application was ready. Next was the strategy approach. The Water Buffalo dungeon was where C-rank magical beasts lived. Weapon explained the characteristics of the Water Buffalo dungeon to everyone. The Water Buffalo's weakness was long-range attacks. They were strong in close combat. There was also something very important. There was a stone door in the Water Buffalo dungeon that absolutely must not be touched. Chloe wondered what was inside. Weapon explained that something might be sealed inside. Ryome knew that the condition for entering the dungeon was not to open the stone slab. I also told everyone that the stone slab absolutely must not be touched. Upon hearing this, everyone looked at me. Weapon also wondered if Gioma knew something. I had to tell them I didn't know, just that it couldn't be touched. I couldn't tell them that a hidden boss was sealed there. That stone door would only open under specific conditions. Setting aside this dangerous element, the Water Buffalo dungeon had very high cost effectiveness. At this moment, Ryome was still eating sweet bean jelly. She explained that people who overuse their brains need sugar. I just felt there was an odd atmosphere nearby. It turned out to be Yandere Chloe looking very tense. I guess she was being vigilant about something. Just a while ago, I boarded the bus heading to the dungeon. This was a place I would never have come to in my previous life. This was the dungeon area with very strict management. The pressure from being constantly watched by the Elder Council was immense. Weapon told me not to be nervous. It was just a C-rank dungeon. He offered me an egg, but I refused. He then asked if Ryome wanted to eat. Ryome also declined, and Chloe was still dozing. Ryome's gaze occasionally glanced toward me. Whenever I turned around, she would look away. I already felt like I was being monitored, and now she was constantly staring at me. After this, we arrived at the dungeon entrance. This place was originally where magical beasts nested. Now it had become a monster farming dungeon. Weapon was curious why I brought so much luggage. I had to open my backpack to show them. The bag was densely packed with sashimi knives. Weapon joked that I was here to sell knives. He believed I had prepared so many sashimi knives for a reason. Chloe still served as the vanguard as before. Soon we reached the dungeon gate. The two people managing the dungeon looked sneaky. The staff asked everyone to fill in their names on the form. When I wrote Gioma, one of the staff members showed a startled expression. I also noticed something was wrong. Under their urging, we still entered the dungeon. That dungeon staff member's look was very suspicious. It should be fine, right? There were names left by people on the dungeon walls. At this moment, Ryome grabbed my hand. She asked if I had any sweets. I had no choice but to pull out candy from my pocket, but she seemed to dislike the candy. She asked if I had sweet bean jelly. She looked reluctant but still ate the candy. Chloe reminded that magical beasts were coming ahead. Weapon was responsible for command and support. Chloe and Ryome were the main damage dealers. Ryome also took out her specialized weapon. I recognized this as the S-rank weapon Red Bow White Stone at a glance. Ryom felt this bow hadn't been used for too long and didn't know if she could perform well. After eating a bite of sweet bean jelly, she regained her confidence. Everyone clearly felt the magical beasts approaching. Everyone got into position. A group of water buffalo charged over. Chloe rushed forward first. She immediately took down one water buffalo. Weapon told Chloe to follow the plan. At this moment, Ryom also drew her bow. After a few whooshing sounds, several water buffalo were shattered by Ryom's arrows. She apologized for blowing up the monsters. If everything continued this chaotically, the task of collecting bullhorns would be impossible. Being strong at long-range output was good, but there would be no way to get enhancement materials. At this moment, a water buffalo attacked Ryom. Ryom also noticed, but in her panic, she kicked a rock. Her weapon Red Bow White Stone was knocked away. Ryom thought she was about to be attacked. I stepped forward to assist Ryom, and a sword energy slashed out, cutting the monster in half. Ryom was stunned. The water buffalo was also cut in two. I asked if she was injured. Ryom blushed and covered her mouth with her hands. Meanwhile, on the other side, the dungeon manager also received notification. Just now, our group had entered the C-rank water buffalo dungeon. We also successfully collected water buffalo horns. Ryom offered me sweet bean jelly as thanks. At this moment, I felt something was wrong behind me. It turned out to be yandere Chloe glaring viciously at us. I quickly changed the subject. I told Chloe that when we entered the dungeon earlier, that staff member seemed a bit strange. Seeing me and Chloe so close, Weapon thought we were dating. This made Chloe's face turn red. I told him not to view male-female relationships through colored glasses. Weapon felt that since I was always with Chloe, we were probably dating. Chloe seemed to be waiting for my answer. At this moment, everyone noticed something was wrong with the number of water buffalo. We hadn't killed many and they were already gone. Ryom also felt the water buffalo from earlier looked strange. They seemed to be fleeing for their lives. Moreover, water buffalo are naturally gentle creatures. They shouldn't behave this way. Most importantly, people in this world actually use these water buffalo for farming. I couldn't imagine people using evils for plowing. It was a bit odd, but everyone didn't think much of it. I asked how Weapon and Ryom knew each other. Ryom confidently explained she was first in the written exam, while Weapon was second. Then Weapon, feeling unconvinced, came to make trouble with her. I had thought Weapon was an archer. Not only did he know Rachel, but he also knew Ryom. Weapon quickly denied this and explained that he and Rachel were distant relatives. This was knowledge I didn't have as a player. Weapon also revealed that his family was a branch of the Spear Saint family. This left me stunned. Weapon expressed satisfaction with his current position and reminded me not to forget him when I became famous. I knew I could never become famous. Weapon believed I would likely become a 7-star hero in the future, and Chloe also thought it was possible. Only Ryom remained silent, and everyone noticed something strange about her. At this moment, Ryom said she hated 7-star heroes. Everyone wondered what was wrong with her. Weapon suggested quickly clearing the dungeon, but I noticed something amiss. There were traces of magic stones remaining on the ground. This might be related to the current abnormality. Under Weapon's urging, we still ventured deeper into the dungeon. There were also 3 shattered magic stones on the ground. Meanwhile, on the other side, the dungeon staff outside was reporting about the water buffalo to his superiors. Because all the magic stones had gone berserk, the frenzied water buffalo were enough to kill those students. The demon woman on the other end of the phone reminded him not to forget the consequences of failure. The dungeon staff had no choice. Since he was dead either way, he might as well open the dungeon door, because the survival rate for students entering the dungeon was 0. He also remembered that student's gaze, as if seeing through everything. He prepared to enter the dungeon to confirm. At this moment, inside the dungeon, Chloe discovered magical beasts ahead. Approaching, there were about 50 of them. Everyone was surprised to hear this. The ground began to shake. Over 50 water buffalo charged out. No one expected so many to appear at once. Moreover, these water buffalo all seemed to have gone mad. They were originally docile magical beasts. What was happening? At this moment, I also recalled my master's teachings. Every knife has a different purpose. You can't use a chicken knife to kill cattle. Sashimi knives are only for killing fish. I asked why sashimi knives could slice beef but couldn't kill cattle. Hearing this, my master clearly showed emotional fluctuation. He used the sashimi knife to cut the fish in half. After this, my master also thought killing cattle wasn't impossible. Now I was going to use a sashimi knife to kill buffalo. I told Chloe to attract the water buffalo's attention and not engage them head-on. I also asked if Weapon understood. Weapon indicated he did. Ryom also wondered why everyone was so calm facing 50 water buffalo. I told Ryom to kill any water buffalo that got close. Ryom asked Weapon what was going on. Why was Gioma so calm? Weapon told Ryom not to be frightened no matter what she saw. The reason I prepared so many sashimi knives was as a precaution. No matter how many water buffalo there were, I would cut them all down. The sword god's blessing activated. A group of water buffalo charged at me. I threw all the sashimi knives in my hands. This left Ryom stunned. She had never seen anyone like this before. The sword god's blessing activated. In an instant, I killed dozens of water buffalo, Ryom exclaimed in disbelief. Yandere Chloe also activated her blessing and pounced forward. She killed 2 water buffalo with 1 strike. I continued weaving through the buffalo herd, quickly eliminating these water buffalo. Ryom watched this scene in shock. A dozen water buffalo surrounded me. Ryom was about to knock an arrow to provide support. I swung the sashimi knife in my hand. With 1 slash, I eliminated these dozen water buffalo. This left Ryom stunned once again. Seeing the scene, she was speechless. I calmly continued collecting water buffalo horns. Thanks to the painless blessing, I could easily handle these dozens of water buffalo. Of course, there was also help from other team members. I patted Chloe's head to express my gratitude. Ryom still hadn't recovered from what happened. Only then did Weapon mention that he had warned her not to be surprised. Ryom roared. How could anyone not be surprised seeing this? She couldn't understand what was wrong with Gioma. Weapon explained that he didn't know either. This was probably what they called a legendary performance. After quite a while, Ryom still hadn't figured out what was happening. Weapon mentioned that clearing the dungeon originally required killing 20 water buffalo. But you alone killed 50. After all, you didn't do anything in last midterm exam, so consider this compensation. Though last time you killed a mermaid. When Weapon said this, he glanced at Ryom. After this, everyone came to a large door. This door was locked with chains. I knew this was where the hidden boss was located. At this moment, on the other side of the dungeon manager entered here and found water buffalo corpses everywhere. He already knew something terrible had happened. This dungeon manager had once owed 2 billion in debt. But someone claiming to be an instructor from Jinghua Academy helped him pay off the 2 billion debt. The condition was to raise water buffalo, then use magic stones to make them go berserk, and when a student named Gioma came, then open the innermost sealed stone door. Faced with such tempting benefits, the dungeon manager easily agreed, so he opened the stone door. I felt this place was too strange. Without realizing it, we had walked deep into the dungeon. The manager's suspicious look from earlier was wrong, plus the magic stone fragments on the ground. This was a hidden boss from the mid-game that should only be available later, but defeating this boss would indeed yield rewards. I saw a red line on the stone door. I could still get out by cutting the seal with Murasame now, but just as I was about to act, a voice reached everyone's ears. A giant axe appeared before everyone. Everyone saw this scene. The hidden boss had awakened after all. The reward for killing him was the blessing of transference. He was the aggregate magical beast minotaur, nicknamed King Bull. Just now, I, Chloe, Ryom, and Weapon accidentally entered the boss room. 3 minotaurs appeared before us. I hadn't expected to encounter the Water Buffalo Dungeon's hidden boss. It was too late to retreat now. Forcing a withdrawal would only injure team members. This time was different from the midterm exam. In my previous life, I had no information about mermaids, but I had experience killing minotaurs. If the painless blessing hadn't run out, these 3 minotaurs could be easily killed. But now I had to find other opportunities. I took out my secret weapon, Murasame. I asked Weapon how long he could maintain the painless blessing. Weapon explained at most 2 minutes. I told Ryom and Chloe to handle the smaller minotaurs. Don't touch the boss in the middle. Leave it to me. Ryom looked at me with a confused expression. I told them to follow the plan. I activated the Sword God's blessing without hesitation. A wave of pain spread throughout my body. The intense pain made me spit out blood, thanks to Weapon's blessing. It reduced some of the pain, allowing me to barely move. The Minotaur boss charged at me. The system prompted that the Vengeful God's blessing accompanies you. I officially engaged the Minotaur boss. The moment we clashed, the pain made me vomit blood. This was a sensation I couldn't experience when using the painless blessing. Instead, my body felt more agile and free than before. I could easily dodge all of the Minotaur's attacks. Even his full-power strikes couldn't hit me. Ryom couldn't believe those were human movements. Originally, I used muscles and footwork to avoid attacks, while using minimal movements to defeat enemies. But actually executing this in practice was worlds apart. When life was threatened, doubts would arise. Ryom, who had prepared herself, drew her bow. She eliminated a smaller minotaur with 1 arrow. Ryom had also heard that the Sword Emperor had previously used his blessing on a student. That student was obviously Gioma. Just as the Minotaur boss's fist was about to hit, I instantly rose and slashed with my sword. The Minotaur boss's arm immediately fell off. It roared loudly in pain. At this moment, on the other side, Chloe was still battling the smaller Minotaur. Weapon was barely maintaining his support blessing. Chloe had finished her battle. After killing 1 magical beast, she was exhausted. She understood she lacked experience fighting magical beasts. The more humanoid magical beasts were, the stronger and more dangerous they became. Chloe also noticed Gioma nearby still battling the Minotaur boss. Although it had lost 1 arm, the Minotaur boss was still very strong, clearly entering its second phase. It raised its axe, preparing to cast magic. No one could believe this magical beast could use magic. His entire arm bulged with veins. Ryom could tell this was life-sacrificing magic. The Berserk Minotaur boss was surrounded by magical wind that prevented anyone from approaching. Even so, Weapon still believed in Gyoma. The Minotaur boss's giant axe also came down. The pain from the sword god's blessing made me vomit blood again. I took out my sashimi knife to block his axe, but I couldn't break through the Minotaur boss's defense at all. If I retreated now, my companions behind me would be in danger. The Minotaur boss sent me flying with one axe blow. Ryom took the opportunity to shoot an arrow, hitting its eye. She shouted for me to finish it off quickly. I also took the chance to create distance. After calming down, I remembered that I could cut through anything with a swing. Countless lines appeared before my eyes. The blade was also covered in blue light. This slash cut through the Minotaur boss. The giant bones were severed in one stroke, cutting it in half. He was split in two. Ryom and Chloe also saw the Minotaur boss being killed. After killing the Minotaur boss, I collapsed from exhaustion. Ryom looked over with a complicated expression. Weapon, whose support blessing had ended, also collapsed. He marveled that Gyoma could always break common sense. He had also seen the blue light on the sword blade earlier, thinking that Gyoma could use sword energy at such a young age. The injured Weapon suddenly began having trouble breathing, and Ryom patted his shoulder, shouting for Weapon to breathe quickly. After this, Ryom hummed a little tune. She understood what Weapon meant when he said, "Prepare to witness legend." She also knew why Weapon liked following behind Gyoma. She asked Gyoma if he couldn't advance to advanced classes this year. Weapon thought Ryom's brain was broken. But the academy didn't seem to have rules against going from advanced to lower classes. For some reason, Ryom wanted to be in the same class as Gyoma. Although I had Weapon's blessing, I still needed to rest for a while. In the future, I should try to fight using the painless blessing. At this moment, Chloe suddenly rushed over. Her whole body pressed against me, making me very uncomfortable. At my reminder, she also realized this. The system prompted that I had obtained a new blessing. This plot and reward were originally Leon's. The blessing of transference could blessing of transferences to objects or living beings. At this moment, at the boss room door, there was a sneaky figure. I told Chloe that the matter I asked you to handle earlier has arrived. The dungeon manager came here. Chloe stabbed her sword into the dungeon manager's thigh, pinning him to the ground like this. She also reminded him to behave himself. Ryom and Weapon also noticed the situation here. The dungeon manager immediately shouted, asking what this was about. I pointed out that the water buffalo going berserk and the boss room being opened were all his doing. Ryom also felt this matter was indeed suspicious. Plus, there was no surveillance inside the dungeon. Weapon couldn't understand why this man would do such a thing. Ryom suggested just torturing him to find out. If he wouldn't talk, they'd open a few more holes in his body. Only then did the dungeon manager reveal that a Jinghua Academy instructor had helped pay off his gambling debts, with the condition being to do this. Weapon couldn't understand betraying students for a little money. The dungeon manager argued it wasn't a small amount. Ryom asked what that instructor looked like. The dungeon manager said it was an instructor with purple hair and eyes. Ryom, who had a photographic memory, recalled this was their assistant instructor. Weapon believed she was also behind the midterm exam incident, because they encountered a mermaid during that midterm exam. Ryom was shocked. Could it be that Leon's hospitalization was from fighting demons? Weapon explained that Gyoma alone had dealt with the mermaid. We had gotten the answers we wanted. The dungeon manager's words had already been recorded, and it was time to clean up. Ryom and Weapon watched this scene in shock. Chloe pulled the sword from the dungeon manager's thigh. Since the hidden dungeon had been opened, it was convenient to make him disappear forever. I left this matter for Chloe to handle. Chloe placed the sword at the dungeon manager's neck. Ignoring his pleas, she killed him. I also knew that the Academy's elder council and instructors had targeted me. When they came, I would cut them all down. Just now, I came to the blacksmith shop with the horn of the hidden dungeon boss Minotaur. When enhancing equipment a rank and below, there's a 100% success rate. Quickly use it to enhance my Murasame. Seeing this, the blacksmith was too shocked to speak, never expecting someone to actually bring this. Because a rank magical beast materials were extremely difficult for Jinghua Academy students to obtain. The blacksmith even guessed that this A-rank material was obtained by Gyoma alone, but I had to tell him it was with team members. Anyway, you need to enhance it, and please repair this too. The blacksmith roared about what I had done to make the weapon like this. I told him to watch his words. The blacksmith immediately changed his expression, explaining he was just worried about me. Before leaving, I reminded him to remember the enhancement and repair. The blacksmith, who dared to be angry but not speak, muttered about making this guy's weapon shorter. The blacksmith thought his inner thoughts had been seen through. I told the blacksmith he could take the remaining materials to buy some drinks. It was class time again, and I came to the classroom. The physical pain hadn't completely disappeared yet. I decided to find weapon for treatment later. The sword god's blessing level had increased again. with the red cloth rate rising to 12.7%. If I tackled more dungeons, it might increase further. Physical characteristics. Only the first time did white hair appear. There were no obvious changes elsewhere, but the white hair was still increasing. I even worried about becoming a powerful bald man like my master. Since the Elder Council was preparing to act against me, I needed to prepare in advance. I needed to study this newly obtained blessing of transference. Though I was sorry to the game's protagonist Leon, there was no choice. First, I needed to recover my body. I also found a piece of sweet bean jelly on the desk, and I was prepared for assassination attempts. Fortunately, there were two people who could be called friends. Weapon and Chloe had little impact on the main story, so I should be able to be friends with them. After coming out of the dungeon, Chloe felt unwell and was hospitalized. I should visit her when I had time. At this moment, the bald instructor and the spy walked in. I really couldn't understand how long the spy planned to stay at the academy. At this moment, my phone rang. Someone sent a message asking what I was doing. I wondered if it was sent by mistake. The person texting told me to look ahead. I glanced up and spotted the person with the rabbit avatar. It was Ryome Zoki. Then the bald instructor announced that Ryome had transferred to our class. Please get along well with her. Everyone was discussing that Ryome had actively requested the transfer. Ryome walked through the classroom with students enthusiastically greeting her. I was thinking she probably wouldn't come over here. This year's students were called the Miracle Generation's Top 4. First place Gioma, second place Abel, third place Rachel, fourth place Ryome Zoki. Among them, one of the 7 heroes, Kojima Zoki's daughter, was Ryome Zoki. Her father was also the Prime Minister of Sakura Country, making her equivalent to Sakura Country's princess. I was still thinking, please don't come over. Coming over would definitely mean trouble. Unexpectedly, she hummed a little tune as she got closer. I kept praying for her not to come over. She still made a flying leap right in front of me. She asked if she could sit next to me and told me to save her phone number immediately. For some reason, sad premonitions never missed their mark. At this moment, on the other side at the Water Buffalo dungeon, police were investigating the specific situation. Dungeon accidents were normally routine, but this time was different. That scene was truly unforgettable. It was full of water buffalo corpses inside. They heard it was a dungeon cleared by Jinghua Academy students. It didn't seem like something ordinary students could do. One employee was worried about their investigation. The employee who entered the dungeon didn't even find a body, as if it had never existed. One policeman suggested it was impossible in the stone room, but another policeman denied this, saying the probability of the sealed stone door being opened was very low. They couldn't interrogate Jinghua Academy students either. They were from noble families, and superiors would never issue search warrants. One policeman was preparing to use the bathroom when he was knocked unconscious and fell. The remaining policemen recognized it as magic. Aguel, who appeared here, greeted him. The policeman also noticed it was a human. The next second, his head was taken by Aguel. Humans who signed contracts with demons were commonly called half-human, half-demon. Working hard was good, but being too serious wasn't good. Just a while ago, Ryome was happily eating sweet bean jelly next to me. I really didn't know what to say to her. Ryome also asked why I wasn't eating the sweet bean jelly she shared. Wasn't I giving her face? I told her that was where Chloe used to sit. Ryome said, wherever you are, I'll sit. Whoever sits first gets the spot. At this moment, I was even more confused and asked Ryome why she came to Wolf class. At this moment, the instructor called everyone out for training, and Ryome looked ready to sleep. From her appearance, she didn't look like she was going to participate in training. Everyone went out. She directly put on an eye mask and started sleeping. Finally, she reminded me to call her Ryome, not Zoki, because in her country, people close to each other call each other by their first names. I asked if Weapon also called you Zoki. Ryome explained that was different. This left me speechless. At this moment, on the other side in Star class, Rachel had just woken up and asked Abel if she had heard that Zoki had run off to Wolf class. How did that girl who only sleeps all day suddenly get motivated? Abel responded with an indifferent attitude. Rachel teased again. Don't you think it's a pity? Without quotas, you can't transfer classes. Wolf class just happened to have a vacancy this year. Zoki, who got the information, struck first. Abel asked what this had to do with her. According to Weapon, Zoki tackled the Water Buffalo dungeon with Gioma and them. Even if Zoki liked Gioma, wasn't there a first-come, first-served basis? After all, our Abel noticed Gioma first. Abel immediately got flustered. Noticing this, Rachel asked again if there was something. Abel seriously explained that she had only spoken to Gioma a few times. She told Rachel not to overthink it. But Rachel felt that wasn't necessarily true. Lying to others was fine, but lying to yourself wasn't good. Hearing this, Abel also noticed something wrong. Grandpa Sword Emperor had suddenly announced he was coming to the academy as an instructor. Abel felt that having Grandpa as an instructor was too conspicuous, but the Sword Emperor said he was going to Wolf class. He also needed to investigate the midterm exam mermaid incident and wouldn't go to Star class to meet with you. Abel could also see Grandpa's abnormal behavior. He was forcibly suppressing that excited expression. The only person who could interest the Sword Emperor was one person. That was Jioma. He was a once-in-a-lifetime genius who broke through class barriers with his strength, a special admission student with terrifying power. When she first met him, he was still a frail and shameless guy. Somehow, he had become a tall, handsome young man. Compared to hero candidate Leon, Jioma behaved more like a hero. He didn't show off his talents to anyone, walking alone on that thorny path. Because Abel hadn't gained Grandpa's recognition, she was very jealous of him. Rachel appeared beside Abel with a mischievous expression. This frightened her into quickly pushing Rachel away. She hastily explained she had no such feelings for Jioma and no energy for that. Rachel said she was relieved to hear that. This way she didn't have to compete with her for Jioma. Although she was confident she could beat that little girl, she really had no confidence in beating Abel. This made Abel a bit shy. Rachel asked again if she was admitting it. On the other side, in Wolf class, the instructor was explaining blessing levels to the students. They were divided into Private Spirit, Guardian Spirit, Fairy Spirit, and Heroic Spirit. A student asked if frequently dreaming about Grandpa meant having ancestral blessing. The instructor explained that ancestors could at most reduce weapon weight and wouldn't become blessings. Ryom was openly drooling and sleeping in class. Even the instructor didn't dare say anything to her. It had been 2 days since the transfer, and Ryom hadn't explained her reason for transferring. She was always sleeping, and there was no time to ask. Sleeping was fine, but why did she have to sleep next to me? Fortunately, Chloe was hospitalized. But thanks to Ryom's cleanup, the dungeon incident had no impact. Most students in the class had Private Spirit level blessings. Skillfully using Private Spirit could achieve Guardian Spirit effects. Because there were very few people with Fairy Spirit level in this world. The blessing of transference I obtained a few days ago was Fairy Spirit level. A student asked what Heroic Spirit level blessing was. Heroic Spirit level blessing was also called Hero level blessing. It was like a legendary existence. Since humans awakened blessings, it had only appeared once. Only the ancestor Hero Valor Vacan had awakened it. When the professor mentioned there was another blessing in modern times, the class bell rang. I raised my hand and asked the instructor a question. The vengeful god's blessing accompanies you. How do you understand this phrase? The instructor didn't know how to answer. Then he explained this question was incorrect, because there were no gods left in this world. If there were other questions, he could visit his research office anytime. After the instructor finished, class ended. At this moment, Ryom also woke up, but she hadn't slept enough and was preparing to continue sleeping. I was also preparing to sleep for a while. Vaguely, I seemed to. Here's someone talking to me. GM wants to chat with you. After opening my eyes, I came to a mysterious space. GM wants to dialogue with you. There were many remnants of modern technology here. In a trance, I came to this broken space. Are you willing to accept? You accepted GM's dialogue. GM interferes with this world. I couldn't believe this was inside the world. The surrounding colors turned black again. Because the other party's level is too high and your level is too low. Conditions are not met. Do you wish to continue? There might be clues about the sword god's blessing. I could also find the reason for falling into this world. I decisively chose to continue. GM used willpower to contact you. World adjustment begins. The place where I was located began to crack. This was the same as when I entered the academy and awakened the sword god's blessing. I wanted to see what that scene really was. Just as I was about to touch it, a hand was placed on my shoulder. Because of external interference, GM said we'd chat next time. I still didn't want to give up this opportunity. GM left you information. Just swing the sword and you can cut through anything. No matter what it is, the vengeful god's blessing accompanies you. It was Ryom who woke me up. She told me to thank her or I'd have to take classes directly in the classroom tomorrow. Soon Ryom also noticed something strange about me, because my face was covered in tears. After this, I thought about this matter. Ryom thought I had a sad dream. Although it was a dream, I couldn't remember what kind of dream it was. At this moment, Weapon, Ryom, and Chloe came over. Weapon explained that enemies targeting Jioma were within the academy. Ryom told Weapon to get to the point and not talk nonsense. Every time he spoke about things, he didn't get to the point. Hearing too much nonsense made her ears bleed. Weapon roared that he would definitely reclaim first place in the next written exam. Ryom said her ears were bleeding and she couldn't listen anymore. Only then did I notice Chloe was standing far away, and I quickly asked how her body was. Chloe explained she was afraid of passing on her cold, so she deliberately stood farther away. I told Zoki that things were a bit complicated now, and I alone couldn't make progress. Zoki came over and emphasized to call her Ryom. Seeing I didn't respond, she emphasized again. Ryom. This made Chloe cough frantically. I had to admit it was fine to just call her Ryom. Weapon told everyone that those targeting Jioma were the Academy's Elder Council. And from what we learned in the last Water Buffalo dungeon about that female instructor's appearance, it was roughly like this. We should be able to find her soon. Currently, it was clear that Adito wouldn't handle the Elder Council's requests for now. Then Ryoma hacked into the academy's website and checked all the instructor's information, finding that instructor but couldn't confirm her identity. I couldn't imagine Ryoma knew these technical skills. Ryoma said that in this industry-flooded world, one had to know at least 1 or 2 skills. To hack into the academy's system, she had to choose the most vulnerable nighttime, which was why she didn't sleep well at night. You didn't think I only knew how to sleep, did you? She had really hit the mark. I did think she was that kind of person. I hadn't given her my phone number. She probably used these technical skills to find my number. The current situation wasn't very clear, and we couldn't go intimidate the Elder Council. If we did that, things would become more complicated. At this moment, Weapon suggested establishing a club of our own, and I also thought of clubs. Jinghua Academy clubs could access anywhere and receive funding. Whether for combat or activities, they would provide corresponding benefits. Clubs were affiliated organizations of Jinghua Academy. Establishing a club would earn the academy's protection. Ryoma also believed that with enemies both inside and outside, only a club could provide protection. Our club's system was part of the Miracle M game content. Players could decorate spaces according to their preferences. They could accumulate favorability with female characters. That was the so-called game real estate industry. I hadn't expected clubs to have this use. The conditions for establishing a club were 5 members and a club proposal. With 5 people needed, we were still short 1 person. I asked if they were all going to join the club. Weapon said of course. Asking such a question was a bit hurtful. Chloe would help with anything Jioma needed. Ryoma said she owed me a favor from the dungeon, and the club also needed a strategist. I hadn't known them for many days, but I didn't expect them to help me so much. So everyone started naming the club. Chloe suggested memories of assassination since we needed to kill enemy forces. Weapon felt this definitely wouldn't work. Ryoma suggested Sakura Village Defense Team, which was again opposed by Weapon. Names like Cheer Club and Memories of Assassination were all rejected. I suggested Travel Club, since we'd be going to dungeons and traveling around. Everyone thought this name was good. Next was finding a club advisor professor, because club advisors had to be professor level. Chloe suggested the Blessing Department professor, but that professor was too busy. As an advisor, he would indeed be a good choice. Ryoma knew finding professors was too difficult. The academy had 500 teachers, but only 30 professors. Only 10 were responsible for first-year students. The professor then asked if I had any suitable candidates. If it was above professor level, there was someone. But above professor level, the academy had even fewer. Then I handed them information about this person. All 3 were stunned after seeing this person, completely unable to believe it was this one. Just a while ago, I came to the administrative office to apply for establishing a club, but the staff here said that to establish a club, the club president had to come apply. I had to tell her I was the president. Unexpectedly, this staff member laughed outright. I doubted if she was really an educational institution employee, showing such a disdainful attitude toward students. Although very annoyed, I still reminded her to quickly confirm the club application. A first-year special admission student. Do you know that establishing a club requires an advisor professor? Don't you understand? What professor would be willing to be an advisor for a special admission students club? Coming from such a low background, don't you understand these things? I was so angry I wanted to tear her apart immediately. But I had to endure for now. In my previous life, I lived in the culinary world for 20 years and met countless annoying people. I understood the best method was to say less. I could only silently make a phone call, which angered the staff member who shouted about being rude. Making phone calls here, the person on the other end said they'd be right over. I had to warn the staff member to quickly confirm the application process. That person was coming soon. This staff member immediately exploded, asking who I thought I was. Let me see how powerful your backing is. I'm an acquaintance of the principal. One word from her and I'll be expelled in minutes, you special admission student. I didn't want to hear her talk anymore and directly turned around. I also warned her to speak more quietly. I remember the staff member's face turned red as she began roaring. I couldn't help but sigh. Now this was more like it. The next second, the administrative office door was blown away. Several staff members still didn't know what was happening. They all glared over. I introduced her as my club advisor, and the staff member's expression turned ugly. This person was of course Jinghua Academy's principal Medea. I also greeted her, and Medea said if it was my request, she'd run over barefoot. This staff member also recognized this was this year's top student, Jioma. I left the club application matter to Medea and left. One staff member quickly brought over a chair. The blonde staff member hastily explained, there must be a misunderstanding. Medea was about to use her blessing to force her to reveal what she said, but she immediately guessed what it should be. Something bad about special admission students. Jioma was someone both she and Sword St. Zieg valued, and she threw a paper at the staff. Give you 5 minutes. Write this resignation letter. Subsequently, Principal Medea told me that the club application had been resolved, and I guessed that employee was fired. Medea also asked me to visit her office after class. I first went to the blacksmith shop. I found he was still busy forging iron. finally showing some semblance of a proper blacksmith. In my previous life as a player, I had mixed feelings about Blacksmith Rand. I used to think he was somewhat pitiful. This game's characteristic is being money-hungry, so players all despise this blacksmith. I didn't spend much money in my previous life, so I didn't quite understand others' thoughts. High-spending players call the blacksmith Light Rand, most cursed Blacksmith Rand, as a lunatic. He even downgraded my Murasame during forging. I have no idea what he was thinking. After the blacksmith finished his work, he brought out my Murasame. Seeing my new Murasame, I couldn't help but exclaim, "Truly Blacksmith Light Rand." After taking the new Murasame, the duration of the painless blessing also increased from 40 seconds to 50 seconds. The 10-second increase was also a significant improvement. I once mocked the original body's owner for awakening a useless painless blessing. The blacksmith also mentioned that something had been enhanced. I checked Murasame's stats and found its hardness had changed from E to C. Having such a massive improvement was certainly a good thing. For now, I don't need to worry about Murasame breaking under excessive force. The system kept prompting me to press down, and after pressing, I discovered something strange. The current weapon Murasame can now gain 3 new characteristics. But magic stones need to be inserted for this to work. At this time, elsewhere, a certain elder from the Council of Elders was here drowning his sorrows in alcohol. He didn't know what to do now. Among the 7-star heroes, there was one called the Mad Tiger. He was a human hero, that was his father, but his father died in the Demon Subjugation War 60 years ago. Someone targeted the young him to obtain the Mad Tiger family's wealth, so he transferred the assassination curse to others, making them kill each other. To revive the once heroic family, he joined the Council of Elders and became an elder. Leading foolish people and maintaining the council's power, conveniently, humans had demons as enemies, giving their authority legitimacy. But certain variables would affect the council's power. That was the hero Leon, who could defeat the Demon King, the heaven-chosen hero. The power disparity between humans and demons was too great. Even the hero couldn't defeat the Demon King. But the ancestor Valor Vacan, who sealed the First Legion commander, truly existed. Such possibilities must be absolutely prevented. Then an instructor found him. The moment their eyes met, it was clear who was stronger and who was weaker. So he signed a contract with the 6th Legion Argol and became a half-demon, half-human villain. Leon alone was troublesome enough, and now there's another special admission student, Gioma. The Adito family delayed action, claiming insufficient justification. They proposed to another elder to summon the Undertakers. At this time, I was still in class. Murasame can be embedded with 3 magic stones, but magic stones only drop from specific boss monsters. Are the first-tier magical beasts that drop magic stones on the same level as demons? Ryome beside me was sleeping again. It had been a week since we cleared the Buffalo Dungeon together. The key to opening the Buffalo Dungeon's hidden treasure room was a magic stone. That magic stone came from a giant magical beast. I wonder who defeated it and obtained the magic stone. The giant magical beast in the game was a massive creature. Behind it was an even more terrifying evil giant serpent. There were even fierce beasts. These magical beasts could be called natural disasters. I really didn't need to risk embedding magic stones in weapons. Dealing with these magical beasts was originally Leon's responsibility. Then Chloe came here. She stared intently at Ryome beside me. Chloe mentioned the blue light the weapon emitted in the Buffalo Dungeon last time. I also remembered that was sword energy, so taking risks for magic stones was necessary. Now my mind was full of thoughts about getting stronger. I had long abandoned the idea of living a stable life. This world had completely deviated from the game's plot. It was as if this world kept finding trouble for me. Then Weapon also came here. I knew that soon the truth behind the second human-to-demon war would be revealed, making weapon embedding necessary. From the current situation, even the outcome of the second human-to-demon war was unpredictable because the game's protagonist Leon was unreliable, defeated by a mermaid in one strike. Then Weapon approached the sleeping Ryome. He ended up getting punched by her. I couldn't understand what was happening. Weapon complained to me that Ryome hit him. I told him the club matter was resolved by the principal. We just needed to find one more member to start activities. Weapon mentioned that Leon had been very active lately, consecutively clearing several high-level dungeons. I also marveled that he finally looked like a protagonist. Ryome also mentioned that Leon only cleared a B-level dungeon yesterday, while we found even a C-level dungeon so difficult. Weapon asked Ryome if she was investigating Leon. It seemed she was very interested in him. Hearing this, Ryome still turned her head away and said she had no interest in Leon now. Leon would obtain the Belmung during the uninhabited island survival training. I had persevered until now with just a kitchen knife, which was quite impressive. I had the illusion that I was constantly blocking troubles for Leon. Even so, I wouldn't be bullied obediently. Nor would I be indecisive like the protagonist. I'm not the protagonist, but I must survive in this world. Whatever it is, I will cut it down with my blade. They thought I was reciting some anime dialogue. At this time, elsewhere, a group of people was summoned here. It was said the leader disliked the people here. But this time the price was too high, so he accepted the mission. If not for making a living, no one would do this kind of work. They were brought to a certain elder's room. This group was the famous villains from the game, the Undertakers. The one who summoned them was the elder who previously wanted to kill Giamma. He didn't waste words and directly handed over the documents. The target to eliminate this time was still Giamma. The Undertakers were surprised that this time's target was just a pretty boy. The elder told them that as long as they killed this person during the uninhabited island survival training, each person would receive 100 million in compensation, with bonuses calculated separately. The body could be thrown directly into the sea to feed the fish. On the day of this week's test exam, I originally planned to just get by casually, but the test scores would be posted publicly. The club's 2 members were second place and first place. As the president, if I didn't work hard, I'd lose face. For questions I didn't know, I just chose option 3. Then my phone received a message. It was Ryom reminding me to eat breakfast. She told me breakfast should include sweet bean jelly, otherwise the brain couldn't function properly. I couldn't understand what she was thinking. I dismissively told her. Eating sweets before exams was a hometown tradition. Ryom questioned what I was eating. I got so annoyed that I told her to eat shit. This made Ryom immediately upset. I prepared to complete this exam properly. Unsurprisingly, I still failed miserably. Chloe asked how my exam went. I had to tell her I chose option 3 for everything. Chloe said essay questions couldn't be answered that way. I relied almost entirely on knowledge accumulated from playing games in my previous life. As long as my grades were better than Chloe's, there wouldn't be a problem. I asked Chloe if Noth had said anything recently. Chloe explained that she did receive contact from her brother Noth, but she was already asleep then. Learning that Noth called at 7 p.m., it was impossible for the night active Chloe not to answer. She definitely ignored it on purpose. Contact information for Adito family members was top secret, so I could only get news from that side through Chloe, but Chloe and Noth didn't have a good relationship. Weapon stayed up several nights but still couldn't get a decent phone. Ryom told him this was the difference in intelligence. Hearing this made Weapon furiously helpless. So Ryom sat next to me. She asked if Chloe and I were dating. This made Chloe's face turn red. I couldn't imagine only teenagers would have such thoughts. I had to explain there was no such thing. Chloe's expression turned sour again. Ryom asked why I never replied to her messages. What do you mean never? There was only that one time I didn't reply. At this moment, I vaguely sensed something was wrong. It was Chloe glaring this way. Because she heard about my contact with Ryom, she immediately questioned what was going on. I couldn't understand why Chloe didn't get angry when Ryom sat next to me in class, but got angry just because of contact. At this time, Weapon asked what was wrong with Chloe. Ryom pretended to ask what was wrong with Chloe. I quickly told her to stay away from me. Ryom thought that since I had known Chloe for some time, I should know what was wrong with her. I couldn't figure out what Ryom was thinking. Chloe also questioned why I hadn't even given her my phone number. I quickly explained that was because Chloe's phone number was classified. At this time, Chloe's eyes were obviously abnormal. Didn't we agree you'd only be my prince? Ryom asked again what was wrong with Chloe. I asked if she'd ever heard of yandere. Ryom immediately played dumb. What does yandere mean? My English isn't very good since I'm a foreigner. Weapon immediately pulled Ryom away. Couldn't she see the situation clearly? This scene looked like someone was about to go crazy. Chloe pulled out a craft knife. I knew this time was different from before, and I had no idea what to do. I'd been too busy lately and hadn't had time to watch YouTube videos on how to handle yandere situations. At this time, Chloe had already approached. You can only look at me alone. I told Chloe we should talk first. She slashed at me with the knife. Weapon's mouth hung open even wider. Ryom had a spectator's attitude. Giamma, you break my heart every time. There are other women around you besides me. This time the woman clearly referred to Ryom. I immediately pushed away Chloe, who was wielding the knife. Ryom continued with her spectator attitude. Chloe became increasingly frantic. For Giamma, I've been working hard all along. But what happened next exceeded Ryom's expectations. Because I pinned Chloe to the ground, I think we should communicate. Chloe was still making a big fuss. I told her to calm down first. Chloe retorted that I never contacted her. What was there to communicate about? I quickly explained that I wanted to talk to her face to face. Communicating through a phone, that metal block, had no emotion at all. Hearing this made Chloe's face turn bright red. Feeling it was effective, I prepared to press the advantage. Chloe, thank you for always thinking of me. Seeing this made Weapon's face turn red too. Ryom looked displeased. I also told Chloe that clearing the Buffalo Dungeon was thanks to her, so she shouldn't be too sad. Hearing this, Chloe smiled happily as if she'd become a different person. I thought I'd finally gotten through this. I told Weapon everything was fine now. Clearly Ryom looked displeased. After pacifying Chloe, I prepared to discuss serious matters. Ryom left alone. I couldn't understand what was wrong with her again. On the way back that day, both Weapon and Ryom were thinking about Giamma. Since some unknown point, whenever Chloe mentioned anything related to Giamma, she would instantly release killing intent. Weapon speculated that Chloe had developed twisted love for Giamma. But what was more shocking was Giamma. He spoke gently on the surface. But behind him, he didn't forget to grip the sashimi knife, using a policy of gentle persuasion combined with force. Gyoma combined both persuasion and violence. When situations turned bad, he knew how to use violence and terror. At first glance, he might seem like a bad person. Undeniably, those were the qualities of a ruler. Based on this alone, Gyoma would definitely become a big shot. At this time, Ryome was still constantly tapping her phone. Seeing her displeased expression, Weapon immediately asked what she was doing. Ryome explained she was deleting videos. Because subscribers didn't follow the operations in her videos, Weapon learned that Ryome was also on YouTube. He also raised his phone with text reading perfect yandere response method. Master this for future comfort. Practical application. What to do when a yandere charges at you with a knife. Weapon was amazed by the 210,000 views. It would be a shame to delete it. Ryome said it was no longer needed. Weapon asked if the channel name Zoki's Japanese was for teaching Japanese. Hearing this, Weapon teased Ryome all the way home. The next day at Jinghua Academy's library. Starting next Wednesday would be 3 days and 2 nights of uninhabited island survival training. Although it was called simulated warfare, teams of 1 to 4 people could be freely formed. Detailed training schedules were announced to all students. I found some books on camping or survival travel. The training involved surviving on an uninhabited island, so I had to learn to distinguish various poisonous plants. Although it wouldn't affect grades, these 3 days and 2 nights would confirm each student's capabilities. I remembered that in the original game event, game players also shone during this survival training. Protagonist Leon obtained his main weapon, the Balmung Blade. This was his main storyline. Here, Abel and Leon developed feelings for each other. The uninhabited island survival was an activity I could fully immerse myself in, so I wasn't envious of them at all. After entering the academy, I'd experienced several life-threatening situations. I'd lost interest in the opposite sex. The academy's elders had their eyes on me. Plus, there was still an unidentified instructor to deal with, and the club was still 1 member short to begin activities. No matter how beautiful they were, I had no interest. It was the same regardless of who they were. I'd continue my youth in the next life. More than those things, as a swordsman, I was more interested in this. The Balmung. Both holy sword and demon sword. Perhaps because I was also a swordsman. So I couldn't help but feel greedy. I knew where the Balmung was located from my previous life as a game player, and I knew its power. But searching for Balmung fragments was also the core content of the plot. Even if I knew all the fragment locations, I definitely couldn't obtain it, because the Balmung had the condition of actively choosing its master. That was awakening the miracle blessing. As the name suggested, it was set as the protagonist's exclusive weapon. Compared to it, what I held was just a supermarket sashimi knife. There was simply no comparison. Anyway, since I couldn't get this weapon, I'd better not think about it and focus on learning the necessary knowledge for 3 days and 2 nights. Avalon was an uninhabited island, where no magical beasts appeared. I hoped it wouldn't be like the midterm exam last time, where special events suddenly occurred. This time, the principal gave special orders for the temporary instructors of the Wolf class to participate along with the leading instructors, humanity's strongest heroes leading first-year students on a camping trip. Although it had deviated from the normal plot, I could still safely move toward my goal. I found some ancient books with rich information in the library, because I also had something to find on Avalon Island. Avalon was a small island located in the Western Sea, a mysterious place where the terrain constantly changed. In the center of the island was an ancient lake called the Queen's Lake. For several ethnic minorities, it was called the Land of Knights, a place of paradise. Now it was an uninhabited island where no one lived. I searched the entire library but couldn't find what I needed. Just when I was at my wit's end, a voice greeted me. Gyoma, long time no see. The person was Leon, the game's protagonist. He came here and greeted me. He was also holding a book on magical theory. According to the original plot, he shouldn't be here. He asked what book I was reading. I told him I was researching information about Avalon Island for the upcoming training. Leon praised how hardworking I was. This point I couldn't deny. Busy with training while exploring dungeons, plus studying magical beast knowledge, every day was busy. Because I knew what would happen in 3 years, I had to prepare with maximum effort. I believed I had to be self-reliant at minimum. Leon's previous question, "Where are you from?" although he didn't differ much from the original Leon. But he was somewhat different from the Leon in my previous life's game. His face was shrouded in sadness, with a somewhat troubled attitude. When leaving, he reminded me to keep working hard. There wasn't much time left before closing. Was this the pressure of being a hero who bore humanity's survival? His shoulders were pressed down by invisible shadows. I also prepared to finish things before closing. The uninhabited island survival was finally about to begin. Rachel and Abel were here. Yandere, Chloe, and Ryome also came here. The 4 meeting didn't result in any arguments. Abel asked if Ryome was ready. Ryome said it was the same as usual. Rachel seemed to have discovered something. Ryome, you girls secretly changed shifts. Academy life has been interesting lately. Ryome explained there was no problem with the shift change procedure, and no need to tell you all. Rachel looked at Abel. Could it be that you're going to watch Giamma get stolen away? Ryom not only went to the Buffalo Dungeon with him last time, but now also joined club activities, and this time would spend 3 days and 2 nights of survival training with Giamma. Ryom interrupted Rachel. Giamma said he'd act alone during this training. Chloe confirmed that Giamma said there were places he wanted to go alone. Rachel seemed to have caught an opportunity. So during the 3 days and 2 nights of uninhabited island survival training, no one will act with Giamma? Everyone heard Rachel's scheming intention. Rachel said that while Giamma said he'd act alone, he never said others couldn't follow him. Ryom admired her logic. Rachel stopped pretending. Although you four haven't said it out loud, you're all thinking the same thing, so I propose a game to you openly. It's called Rachel's Game. The other 3 didn't understand what this game meant. Rachel explained that because Avalon Island's terrain and environment constantly changed, even using subspace gates, everyone would be randomly dropped somewhere. So everyone had to use their own abilities to find their group members. But this was also the interesting part of this training. So during these 3 days and 2 nights of survival training, whoever found Giamma first, the other 3 couldn't compete with them. Hearing this surprised the two. Abel's face turned red. After meeting Giamma, you can each handle things yourselves, but don't interfere. Ryom mentioned taking verification photos as evidence. Abel thought about monopolizing Giamma and her face turned redder, so she had to find him first. Then, thinking about the matter between Giamma and Grandpa Sword Emperor, Abel turned and told everyone she had no time for such childish games and wouldn't participate. Ryom looked seriously at Abel's departing figure. The other 3 participated in this game. I also came to this gathering point. I brought 24 sashimi knives plus secret weapons. Principal Medea also reminded to bring spare medicine, at least 3 sets of underwear, and choose dirt-resistant black ones. I complained that she was simply like a grandmother character. I searched everywhere for that instructor from last time. Purple hair and purple glasses. A tall female instructor. Although I didn't know her intentions, if she had her eyes on me, the uninhabited island survival training was the perfect opportunity, utilizing the island's characteristic of constantly changing terrain and environment. After killing someone, disposing of the body would be easy. Of course, this point worked the same way for me. Although I was reluctant to kill people with a blade, it was unavoidable. I took out weapons sketch and began searching for this instructor. Everyone had purple hair, making it impossible to narrow down. Then the Sword Emperor and Abel walked over. He told me that talent plus effort would multiply results, but also to balance work and rest, paying attention to health. I should take this training as an opportunity to rest well. I could see the Sword Emperor wanted to go fishing and enjoy life. I also hoped he could catch a big fish. I couldn't help complaining that the Sword Emperor dressed really fashionably. Then Abel walked to my side. Seeing me, she just snorted coldly. Abel will have a boyfriend soon, her expression should be more relaxed. Nearby, Ryom was sneakily approaching me. I flicked her forehead with my finger. It was just a joke, how could you do that? I quickly apologized, saying it wasn't intentional. Ryom shouted angrily that her forehead wasn't a punching bag. I couldn't understand the character Zoki Ryom. This girl had also stopped sleeping lately, constantly poking around near me. If I didn't do this, I didn't know what other tantrums she'd throw that would be unbearable. Although I didn't know what attracted her to me, Ryom was one of the female leads. I didn't want to get too close to her. The announcement reminded everyone that the subspace gate to Avalon Island was opening. Please pay attention to safety and have a pleasant time. My goal this time was to survive safely. May the hero's blessing always be with you. A flash of white light, and I arrived on the small island. I'd been in this world for a year and finally felt like I was entering a fantasy world. This was the sacred land Avalon. Before me was the primordial world tree. But there was no time to admire the scenery. The urgent matter was to find a new blessing. The first thing I did upon landing was search for the regeneration blessing. Because I knew its specific location from playing the game in my previous life. It seemed to be on the other side of the rocky area. The blessing's specific location was near the lake in the center of the island. That meant near the lake where the world tree was located. I had to cross the rocky terrain and forest. To prevent students from just playing around, the academy arranged a task to find spheres on the island. It was equivalent to the treasure hunt games often played during outings. The found spheres would also count toward grades. They could also be used as weapon enhancement materials. I wanted to find some too, for this uninhabited island survival training. I bought a super large machete at the supermarket. This was also for this survival training. I still had to conserve the painless blessing. After swinging it a few times, the feel seemed pretty good. Just something felt off. I'd use the sashimi knife at critical moments. Then I discovered a cute rabbit. Tonight's food was secured. I could also practice with the machete. The next second, the cute rabbit turned into a giant rabbit. I wasn't afraid of water buffalo, let alone this rabbit. I prepared to activate the sword god's blessing, but then I held back. This rabbit was completely unruffled. At this time, elsewhere, Abel also found a rabbit. She thought it was too cute to hurt. She even reached out to pet it. Unexpectedly, the rabbit bit her. This made Abel furious. She drew her sword to kill this rabbit, just in time to test her special training results. At this moment, the enraged rabbit ran even faster. While running, it didn't forget to turn back and mock Abel. Seeing this made her angrier. She hadn't expected this damn rabbit to hide its strength. Just like that guy Gioma. Abel chased the rabbit frantically. Just as she was about to catch it, the island's terrain changed. Abel fell directly into the sea. As the Sword Emperor's granddaughter, a direct member of the Nepalon family, she couldn't even catch one rabbit. Finally, she saw the rabbit as Gioma, just like she could never catch up to him. At this time, I was still battling the rabbit. Even with desperate physical training, it was useless. Without relying on blessings, I was simply weak. Compared to my previous life, my physical condition was much better, but I still couldn't catch this rabbit. Rather than waste energy, starving would be more straightforward, so I told the rabbit I'd spare it today and to get lost quickly. The rabbit bared its teeth mockingly at me. Trash. Who could tolerate this? Angrily, I directly activated the sword god's blessing. Nearby, Rachel was running frantically, because she got lost in the area. Although she told them about playing Rachel's game, she had no idea how to proceed. Then she noticed crows in the sky. She heard crows liked shiny things. Following them should lead to Gioma, and their black feathers were the same color as Gioma's hair. Same color, following the crows would likely lead to seeing Gioma. So she began her operation. Nearby, Ryom seemed to hear Rachel's voice. After confirming her food and weapons, she also prepared to search for Gioma. Since they were playing a game, she couldn't lose. Avalon Island's location constantly changed. The only unchanging place was the World Tree. With Gioma's personality, wanting to be alone probably meant planning something, most likely doing something in the rarely visited central area. To prevent being stolen by others, she had to take action. After meeting him, she still had to get revenge for the forehead flick. Nearby, Chloe was also running frantically. She wanted to find Gioma first, make Gioma look only at her. Then she saw a bright light ahead. At this time, I was roasting rabbit meat, making the remaining meat into jerky. Temporarily, no need to worry about food. I seemed to hear movement nearby. This wasn't an animal sound. It might be hostile forces targeting me. I couldn't relax my guard at all. The opponent didn't stop and was approaching me. I still had some painless blessing left. The sashimi knife was also ready. I could draw and kill the opponent at any time. Chloe rushed toward the light spot ahead. Just then she encountered Rachel, who was also looking for Gioma. The two started arguing upon meeting. Having drawn my blade, I realized this person was familiar. I was stunned to see a completely soaked Abel shivering here. She seemed to want to say something but couldn't speak. Seeing the roasted meat nearby, she was obviously hungry. Abel also noticed the warm fur nearby, and the jerky that would solve hunger problems. Thinking of the rabbit from earlier, she'd lost to Gioma again just with this, feeling embarrassed and cold at the same time. So I put the rabbit fur over Abel's shoulders. This scene made her face turn red. Then she smelled the roasted meat. After catching the scent, she could no longer bear the hunger. I also noticed her injured ankle. Without waiting for Abel's reaction, I prepared to bandage it for her. If left untreated, it would worsen during our time on the island. Abel also expressed her gratitude. Soon after, I finished bandaging it for her. After we sat in silence for a while, I asked why she was acting alone. She remembered what Rachel said. The person who found Gioma first could monopolize him and do whatever she wants. Thinking about this made her face redder, so Abel explained she had things she wanted to do, and being alone was more convenient. It seemed similar to me. At this time, Abel remembered Rachel's game, to prevent Gioma from being stolen by them. She took a photo and uploaded it to the group chat. Ryom couldn't believe this fact. Rachel laughed foolishly. Ryom had thought Abel really wouldn't participate. Rachel also thought she was a cat that wouldn't steal fish. After checking in, Abel ignored them. I handed her the roasted rabbit meat. Watching Abel eat, I felt a bit awkward. Abel asked why I was so capable. I knew my capability was only for 1 minute, but I'd caused quite a stir at Jinghua Academy this year. I told her it was because I had a good master who taught me swordsmanship. Abel believed that having learned swordsmanship by Grandpa's side for 17 years, she understood swords better than anyone, but had never seen Gioma's type of swordsmanship. So she asked what I'd learned and from which family. I didn't answer Abel's question, but told her that being strong doesn't necessarily mean victory. The person who persists to the end without giving up will win. The person who finds a way to keep going is the truly strong one. This stunned Abel. Such strange remarks. She couldn't help but laugh. This way of speaking was just like Grandpa's Sword Emperor. She wondered if Gioma was really 17 years old. Abel also remembered the last time they chatted sitting in chairs. This was their first real conversation since then. So I handed her more rabbit meat. I had to use meat to stop her mouth first. The next day, Abel woke up to find Gioma had disappeared without even saying goodbye. He left jerky nearby, remembering how he helped bandage her wound last night. Abel's face turned bright red, but seeing the well-bandaged bandage on her foot, tears unconsciously flowed down. She didn't know why she was crying. This was the first time someone had taken care of her. Throughout her life, she'd always resolved everything herself. Even when facing high walls, she had to climb over them. Holding back tears that wanted to fall, she had no energy left to enjoy the happiness of her age. This was the fate of those who inherited the Nepalon name. She couldn't understand why Gioma was so good to her, yet she'd always been jealous of him. Were there really people who would be kind to her without expecting anything in return? 2 days remained. Crying here wouldn't change anything, she had to repay this debt to him, so Abel began moving again. At this time, I started my plan. This island was a bit cold at night and a bit hot during the day. Abel should be awake by now. She was indeed very beautiful, but she seemed to not like me much. Abel's character attribute was that of a proud young lady, suddenly encountering and carefully caring for her last night. It wasn't because I liked Abel, but because seeing her miserable state. I simply couldn't ignore it. Just being a little kind to her wouldn't cause earth-shattering changes. I finally left the forest area. Obtaining the item might cause a slight change to the plot. But overall, the changes shouldn't be too significant, I remembered. Today was the day Abel and Leon's feelings began to sprout. She wouldn't give the fur to Leon, would she? If I'd remembered this earlier, I should have taken the fur back. I had to find the blessing before sunset. The regeneration blessing was a guardian spirit level blessing, 1 rank lower than the blessing of transference. It could instantly improve regeneration ability, but this blessing could only be used on oneself. This point matched the guardian spirit level. The same blessing of transference wasn't limited to just myself. If I possessed both regeneration and blessing of transferences, I could repair the easily damaged sashimi knife at any time. The regeneration blessing seemed like an awesome skill at first glance, but it couldn't make severed limbs grow back. At most, it could make wounds heal quickly. Plus this blessing. It didn't mean so much. Taking it wouldn't affect Leon's growth at all. Leon would become very powerful in the future. So I had to obtain this blessing. This was completely different from the game. I remembered the game showed this area as all rocks. I searched until sunset before finding this place. I didn't know what that shining object was. If it was a blessing, it should be hidden. What was that sphere? Did obtaining a blessing also come with such a large orb? I thought my luck was really good today. I'd had no luck recently, but fortune was finally changing. I planned to take this sphere first, then look for the blessing. Seeing shiny things was still irresistible. I hoped to find the blessing before sunset. Then a voice came. I didn't expect you to come this deep. You're not here to see the world tree, are you? Are you here to find the sphere? The person was Leon, the game's protagonist. Or do you have another purpose for being here? I told him I saw this sphere from afar, so I came to get it. Leon didn't waste words. Since you saw this sphere and came over, there's no choice. Let's fight. The day Leon was born, half the world laughed. Because he obtained the hero's proof. I couldn't understand the current situation. Shouldn't Leon be with Abel right now? Today was supposed to be an important turning point in the plot. Could it be that I stole their important plot moment, so nothing happened? But we couldn't fight over something like this. Leon found the Balmung, but it seemed to be an incomplete Balmung. The world's most evil and fierce demon sword, Balmung. The blue jewel embedded in the center gave it holy power. The catalyst that neutralized magic was the ether gem, but Balmung itself was based on magic. Even using ether gems to neutralize magic still seriously affected the user's performance. So in the game, Balmung could sometimes become a demon sword or a holy sword depending on the player. I guess Leon had some kind of problem. Then Leon said this was just practice. He hadn't learned how to enter meditation yet. Direct combat might result in death. What was he talking about? Was he serious? Leon said he wasn't good at lying. I guess this guy wanted to stop my growth after obtaining Balmung. Although I could understand Leon's actions, this was just speculation. What was certain was that the sphere was just an excuse. Leon explained there wasn't much time, and they needed to fight quickly. After saying this, he charged at me. At this time, elsewhere, Ryom was shouting loudly. She couldn't understand why she couldn't find the person she was looking for, but found Weapon instead. Weapon also took offense to this. He immediately pointed out that you're not looking for Gioma. Are you harboring different feelings toward him? Ryom asked Weapon why he would think such a thing. Of course it's because you spent entire days sleeping at the archery range a month ago. But recently you've been extremely active when you're with Gioma. This isn't like your usual self at all. You hate being a hacker because you find it troublesome, but this time you volunteered to gather information. It's really suspicious. Upon hearing this, Ryom suddenly stopped in her tracks. She suddenly called out to Weapon. This left Weapon somewhat confused. Ryom suddenly turned around and asked with a flushed face, "Was it that obvious?" Weapon just felt like Ryom was possessed by a ghost or under some kind of mental magic spell. This angered Ryom, who punched him. At that moment, they heard a sound. This didn't sound like an earthquake. The first person Ryom thought of was Gioma. Meanwhile, on the other side, Leon severed my machete with a single sword strike. I'm starting to wonder if this guy has lost his mind. Why won't he fight back? Why won't he battle? Gioma, you don't understand respect for others? Honestly, I didn't expect him to actually swing his Balmung slash at me, then suddenly provoke me out of nowhere. I can't fight him. If I use my blessing, I might accidentally injure him, so I hesitated about whether to make a move. But if I keep holding back, I might lose my head. Leon is the protagonist with the miracle's blessing. Gioma, quickly draw your sword. This was bound to happen eventually. Leon possesses the miracle's blessing. Without using blessing, I have no way to fight this monster. I had no choice but to abandon my peaceful life. The sword god's blessing activated. A thunderous roar echoed. My battle with Leon had begun. Using the sashimi knife, I could barely fend off his balmung slash. However, the sashimi knife itself couldn't withstand the power of the balmung slash. It was still cut in half. I had to retreat and create distance. I pulled out backup sashimi knives. I threw them at him. Leon swung his balmung slash and severed them. He charged at me again. The distance between us had become unavoidable. Leon swung his blade at me. With a whoosh, he severed a stone pillar. Even the belt holding my sashimi knives was cut in two. Fortunately, I managed to dodge that strike. I created distance between us once more. Leon was on a completely different level from the midterm exams. The protagonist's buff is too overpowered. Is he the only one leveling up? Before I could react, a sword energy came rushing toward me. With a thunderous crash, the ground was carved with a deep fissure. This is the power of the holy sword balmung slash. That sword strike drained Leon of considerable magical power. I emerged from the smoke as well. Leon, why are you doing this? He couldn't answer for a moment. Because of the world. For some reason, he seemed unable to speak the complete sentence. If it's you, you can make everyone in the world happy and joyful. At this moment, Leon gripped his balmung slash tightly once more. Through this sparring match, we'll know who is who. A sword energy broke through the clouds. My figure and Leon's were covered by this radiance. Even so, I still charged forward and swung my blade. A corner of the balmung slash was severed. This battle had reached its conclusion. Leon recalled his father's words. This matter seemed too difficult for him. The one chosen to be the hero shouldn't be me. It should be you, Gioma. I successfully obtained glowing orb. A golden light swept past. Leon's figure became blurred. When I turned around, he had vanished. Only a feather remained on the ground. I thought the sudden sparring was just Leon's resolve as a hero, an act of self-improvement. But I didn't want to lose to anyone either. Seeing how he charged at me, he definitely wouldn't give up easily. What a pity about my pile of sashimi knives. One wrong move and I could have lost my life. To avoid injuring Leon, I dodged left and right. But Leon's growth also surprised me. The sparring just now seemed to have severed a piece of the balmung slash. After repairs and finding more parts, it should still be able to reach its final form. Not injuring Leon was fortunate. If the game's protagonist died, the world might have ended too. I tried touching this glowing orb. A burst of light shot out. Congratulations on obtaining the regeneration blessing. It can rapidly restore damaged cells to quick recovery. However, body parts that have fallen to the ground cannot be regenerated. I never expected to obtain the regeneration blessing this way. I pricked my arm to test this protection's performance. The pierced wound healed rapidly. The effectiveness far exceeded expectations. Fortunately, I got what I wanted. That evening, I built a fire by myself. Reflecting on the day's events, I still couldn't understand what had happened. Could it really be because of Abel? It was bound to happen eventually anyway. Due to the urgent situation, I didn't have time to question him about what he meant. Leon is from this world. Then what kind of existence is he? My falling into this world itself raises many questions. I need to do some necessary things. In my previous life, I had a fiery temperament. Although I've controlled it much more now, I cannot pretend not to see injustice. I often fought with difficult customers. My character of courageously facing difficulties could be considered a sense of justice. Originally, I tried to avoid getting involved in the main storyline. Without knowing when, I began putting my own safety first. Having reached this point, it's destiny. To obtain someone who wouldn't greatly affect the main storyline, I still ended up fighting Leon. And now I could be assassinated at any time. If my life is threatened, I really will kill people. Not magical beasts, but humans. Is what I'm doing really correct? I don't even know what will happen then. So much bullshit. You should act like yourself. In this situation, I actually started seeing hallucinations. I'm probably too tired. If Ryome were here, she would definitely say this. I wonder what the others are doing. At this moment, Ryome was still with weapon. The two had even drawn a line. Chloe and Rachel were together. Abel was still washing his body in the pool. I fell asleep like this. Several people stealthily approached my side. Without wasting words, they immediately launched their hidden weapons. I hastily dodged upon reacting. But I was still cut by this hidden weapon. Clearly, their assassination attempt had failed. They all wondered if this kid was really just a student. Someone suggested taking this opportunity to recruit him. The leader ordered him to be quiet. I also recognized her as the boss of the Undertakers, Rizian, the half-human, half-demon that Leon would face for the first time in the future. Originally a noble lady, but due to her relative's betrayal, she was expelled from her family. After becoming an assassin, the resentment in her heart grew stronger and stronger. She became a villain and was killed by Leon, a tragic character. Even so, I don't sympathize at all with this demon who abandoned being human. The bald man questioned, "Kid, who exactly are you? You actually managed to dodge that hidden weapon just now. Are you an assassin disguised as a student?" The bald man could tell that the person before him was no ordinary individual. To still show such an expression under these circumstances, he again suggested to the leader that they recruit him. Rissian didn't respond, but instead asked, "Which faction are you from? I don't understand what they're talking about." This group of assassins who received a contract to kill me are asking which faction I belong to. In their eyes, don't I look like a student? Kid, although you're about to die, you're truly impressive. This is the first time the leader has shown interest in prey, right? Although you're the top student, I didn't expect you to be just a brat. Being able to dodge our attack just now shows you could enter this line of work. I also guessed their background. Looking at this situation, you came here under the orders of some elder, right? The several people whose identities were exposed were also startled. They questioned again, "You brat, which faction are you from? How dare you investigate us? I only know that you're butchers who kill for money." One person beside them immediately flew into a rage. This kid said the words the leader hates most. You think you're of noble status and hate hearing the word butcher from the mouth of a special admission student like me? One person beside them swung his fist and punched toward me. I easily avoided this punch. He was still cursing that the little mouse had actually dodged. Little did he know he had already been struck by a blade. The next second, his head fell to the ground. I killed him at the fastest speed. The other few people still didn't understand what had happened. This was my first time killing a person. Not in subspace, but in reality. This feeling wasn't too terrible. I activated the Sword God's blessing without hesitation. May God's blessing be with you. My target is the boss of the Undertakers, Rissian. This time, I will kill them all.